You and I were talking just before we started recording about this, and my wife and I had a lot of miscarriages, 7 of them actually. We did all those at home, and I saw everything from, I hate to say it like this, but like a sort of a blood clot to like little babies be birthed dead. The problem with that is for young people growing up today, they don't see the fingerprint of the creator anymore. They see the fingerprint of human ingenuity. We live surrounded by self-assembling, self-replicating organisms that become more complex over time in the face of entropy. Every time we solve a problem, we create multiple problems. And that's compounds and compounds and compounds on itself. Elon Musk. Well, when you watch what he does, you're like, oh, this is an enemy of humanity. He's the guy who's creating the human brain computer chip interface. This guy wants to literally plug you into the matrix.
Nothing is real anymore.
Well, that's because this is a multi-thousand-year-old plan. We can't get out. We're actually trapped here.
Daniel, I'm really stoked to see you and welcome.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate you sharing your platform with me.
So I want to start with just letting you know because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I've been listening to many podcasts like for many, many years. I was like one of the early adopters of podcast listening. And I think that your podcast, Rewild Yourself, this is like back in the day, I think that is the podcast that I've been listening to the most. And then when I knew that we were going to talk to each other, I started just like trying to remember which podcast episode I've been listening to, what people I've been continuing to follow, like Ido Portal, Kim Anami, Gabor Mate, Wim Hof, and so on, that you've had on the show. And I tried to make a mind map over like how this podcast have impacted my life. So are you ready?
Wow. Yeah.
I bought a small farm where I could go around naked and take a dump in the forest, like in my own on my own farm. I trained with Ido Portal for 3 months. I got a hunting license from Kim Anami. I exploring tantra a lot and been into like those circles a little bit. All the things you talk about, like when it comes to artificial light, I'm wearing like blue blockers now because I'm going into nighttime here in Portugal. I started cold plunging and started Sweden's biggest cold plunging community. Shout out to Sweden Polar Bears. Yeah. And I think I found you through a YouTube video to do the Ayurvedic nose cleanse.
That's so funny. I just made new videos about that yesterday. Yeah. It's been a while.
So yes. So I don't do it like every day, but I'm doing it when I need to. Yeah. I stopped wearing sunscreen. I learned about edible plants. I'm foraging them like when I'm able to in Sweden. And I'm raised as a city boy. Like they call it the concrete jungle where I'm from. Mm-hmm. But what I remember most from my childhood was when my dad took us outside in nature, in the small forest that we had outside of the concrete jungle we were living in. Seeing the cows outside, there maybe like 1 kilometer away from us. We had cows, we had the sea, we had like the closeness to nature, but it wasn't like naturally to just like go outside and play in it. But the best memories I had is always like in nature with my father. And so thank you for all the inspiration. Like my life is completely different, and I left living in city central of Stockholm as a grown-up, and it really changed my life. And I feel that I'm just like more calm, and I love this connection that I have to nature. And now raising 3 kids, instead of like buying all these plastic toys and like going and paying for different playgrounds where you like play inside, I buy them like a knife or a little saw or some bushcraft things, and we go outside and we build stuff. I just like thank you for that. My life is like totally different thanks to you.
And I will say that, and I bet you know the feeling, because you hear people say it all the time. Oh, that means so much to me to hear. But like, from podcasting, when people come and tell you that kind of a thing, it really does mean a lot to hear that.
Yeah.
And I was also early to the podcast space. So when I made that podcast, Rewild Yourself, there wasn't so many shows around. It's so interesting now because the content that I was doing then and I was curating at the time was so much less today there's 600 podcasts that curate that same kind of content. But I think at the
Yeah.
time it was very unique and a little ahead of its day. And I mean, it's just so interesting now because I keep dipping my toe back into the podcast space. But wow, is it ever just a filled room now? All right. There's just so many players.
There are so many players, but I also like love to find people that I resonate with. So
Yeah.
your podcast, I still resonate with your voice and your perspective because it's like really unique, and I feel that it is grounded in something that I can make sense of. Because when I listen to podcasts, they are often like coming from this like really, what do you call it, like reductionistic point of view, where we just like focus in and we are just like looking into these small molecules instead of like seeing the whole forest. So I
Yeah.
really appreciate your perspective on things, and that is why I wanted to have you on the show. But I'm
Mm.
also want to know, what are you up to today? Because you stopped doing the Rewild Yourself podcast. Wild Fed podcast stopped like a couple of years ago. So tell us about yourself and what are you up to today?
Yeah, well, thank you for all of that. I appreciate it all. And I will say that when it comes to podcasting and just public speaking, I've always, the business and money side of it, I'm notoriously just not that good at. And the part I put a lot of passion and honesty into what I say. I forget to promote my things very often because I'm so passionate about what I'm saying. And I think 90% of the podcasts out there or the shows out there are really businesses first. And second is the communication of the information. And I get that, but I just approach it differently, and I think that's landed in some ways. But yeah, so today I just got greenlit on the 6th season of my television show, Wild Fed. So you mentioned Wild Fed was a podcast for a while. That podcast, Rewild Yourself was a very broad podcast, kind of like your show. Looking through your episodes, it's like, okay, you're hitting on all those different topics, everything that you kind of are interested in. And Rewild Yourself was like that. Wild Fed was much more dialed in on hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. And it was really a companion to the television show. The television show has taken off. The podcast was a very niche. So, the amount of people who, like a lot of my fans came over and were like, okay, I'm not, I don't hunt. Like, this isn't that relatable to me. So we did about 175 episodes. That was kind of a more niche topic. But my main work right now is the TV show. And so Wild Fed is a cable show. And we go out in every episode. We hunt something, we forage something. Usually we're connecting in with other hunters and foragers in that process. Sometimes not, but most of the time. And then we bring those ingredients back, and either I cook or I work with a chef or some home cook and create really great meals. And then everybody who's part of that comes together. And as you know, and have heard me say over the years, I look at Wild Foods as like a Trojan horse for introducing people to broader concepts about nature. And so I'm kind of unique in the hunting space. I'm on the Outdoor Channel, which in the US here is where all of the hunting and fishing content lives.
Mm.
And I'm the oddball out there. I think that'd be easy to say. I'm not
Yeah.
like the rest. Most of them there grew up hunting and fishing. That's their passion. For me, I didn't start that until my late 30s.
Yeah.
And I did it as an outgrowth of what I was already learning from this idea of rewilding. And so I've approached it from a really different place. And so my show is really about inviting people into the natural world for those reasons that you mentioned at the beginning of the show, which is that reconnection, which we'll surely go much deeper into. So that, and then I'd say the other big thing that's really been keeping me busy is fitness. Just become pretty obsessive about fitness. Yeah, and I was just looking today at my a couple of years ago. I started using a heart rate monitor for my
Mm.
cardio training, and I just saw the other day I've reached I think it's like 490 hours now since 2022. So that's 20 days straight of cardio training
Wow.
in zone 2. And then I'm also, I'm doing CrossFit a few days a week and lifting weights and, all kinds of other stuff too. So fitness is a big part of my life. And I'd say in the first half of my life, I really thought food was more important than exercise. And I think now I would almost reverse those two in how I see.
Really? Because
Yeah.
I hear like from really famous voices that like 80% or 90% is food, and you like in on how you shape your body. I can
Mhm.
feel that like the food I put in my mouth can like really affect how I look in my body. I can still look fit without exercising because, I've been like really busy with like work, having the company, having 3 kids, not sleeping, but just like if I can regulate what I put in my body, some intermittent fasting. And because I haven't had time to do like go to the gym and do like proper exercises. So I just
Haven't
have like a
made the time. Haven't
yeah,
made the
yeah,
time.
yeah. I haven't made the time. Thank you for the
Yeah, I know
correction.
you. I know you
Yeah,
got. I got little kiddos at home. I'm
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah,
teasing you.
yeah. But let me know about your philosophy on that.
Well, I got into food like obsessively into food at age 16,
You've been in a
and I
documentary as well, right?
a couple documentaries about it. Hungry for Change is one of them that I was
Yeah.
in. Yeah, so most of my life now, I'll be 47 this year, so I'm 46. So that's 30 years of food as like my main interest, and still today. I mean, I'm out hunting, fishing, and foraging because I followed food all the way back to its source over 3 decades.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious to me now. By the way, I just want to say that as a quick addendum here. Like, it's so obvious to me now. Hey, if I think lettuce is a good food, I should go see what a wild lettuce is like, where lettuce came from. That makes so much sense to me now, but it took me almost 30 years to even think of that.
Yeah.
It's ironic. And also, I do want to say, like, 30 years ago, if you wanted to learn something, you went to the library, and information was expensive. Basically, right? It took time and energy to learn new things. So it took longer to arrive at conclusions than today, because today I could just get online. And as you know, it's just an inundation of information. So it was a different time. But okay, one of the things over those 30 years that really bothered me, because I was so focused on quality nutrition as a young person. And then I would go to like a GNC, and I would see people walking out of there that looked so much healthier than all these like health food people I'd be around. Or I'd go to these health conferences, and most everybody was kind of skinny, a bit low energy. Maybe they were
A little bit
high
pale.
energy, but physically low energy, a little bit
Yeah.
pale. Body composition was that kind of skinny fat look, right? People who
Yeah.
are just focused on the diet side. Now, obviously, look, they're king and queen. Whichever one you think is more important, it's up to you, whether it's diet. It's obviously the answer is diet plus exercise, or exercise plus diet. I'm not in any way trying to like separate the two big picture, but it's like hemispheres of the brain. One controls one eye, one controls the other eye. It's like you need them both. But that said, or it'd be like you were saying before about reductionism. Most of human history has been sort of right brain dominant, with the left brain doing some work. And now it's like a left brain dominant world with the right brain doing some work, right? So it's something like that. But I think you, just like me, where are you going to see healthier looking people, at the gym or at the Whole Foods? It's like the Whole Foods person's going to look healthier than the average person on the street, maybe. But people who are training can overcome the deficiencies of their diet better than diet people can overcome the deficiencies of their lack of exercise. And in particular, as you age, having muscle mass and having a good engine, a cardiovascular system, I just think is crucial. The other thing is, when you don't exercise, it's harder to get away with eating bad food. But when you exercise vigorously a lot, it's like if I'm burning a fire. You come from Sweden, right?
Yeah.
You know about burning fires.
Yeah.
If my fire is burning at a really low smolder, and I throw some junk in there, like some plastic, and it's just smoldering and smoking and stinking, and it's polluting everything, and it's ruining the inside of the stove and the chimney because I'm not burning it hot enough. But if I have a fire that's just ripping and I've just been putting logs to it, I've got a coal bed, I throw some plastic in there. It's not good, but it's gone really fast. And so if you take the person whose whole approach is diet based, and you throw something not so good into their body, it moves through slow, they burn it slow, it feels toxic and gross, and they're like, oh, I feel so sick from this. But you take somebody who's doing like 30-minute ANRAP at CrossFit, at a high heart rate, and you throw a Twinkie in them, it's gone in a second, man. They burn that thing right up. Almost no residue, like none of that, oh, I feel bad. So what I noticed is the times in my life where I was doing diet only, but not the exercise, everything, you become so much more sensitive to everything because your metabolism is turned way down. So when you kind of crank that up with exercise, you have muscle mass, you're using your heart rate. I think you can get away with a lot more. And that's valuable because we're living in this really toxic environment. And the other thing is like, that's the challenge when you're doing it just with food, you're so sensitive that all those environmental influences, I think, move you. So that's like one component. The other component, like I said, though, it's again, just look at people coming out of the health food store versus people coming out of the gym. The people coming out of the gym, you're like, I know that person's not living the full healthy lifestyle. They just look healthier. They're glowing, they're shining because they're sweating all the time. They've got muscle mass, they've got low body fat. And that, I think, is, but obviously combining the two is where the power is. But yeah, I think in the second part of my life, food is not as important to me as the exercise component. And I think here's another component. When I was younger, this sounds so silly to me today, but like when I was 20, I really thought there was like some way I could eat myself to immortality. You see that all the time in younger people. Like, oh, if I just eat the right foods, like I'll never have a disease. I'll never get sick. I'll always be healthy because all things that are bad are caused by bad food. And that's just actually not true. But it's easy to get into that mindset. So you start thinking that through diet alone, you're going to achieve everything. Then you start getting older and you realize like, man, that's actually not totally true. And if you want to go into old age and be healthy, you have to have muscle mass and you've got to have a high VO2 max. You know, that's your ability to utilize oxygen cardiovascularly. If you don't have that, the aging process is way harder on you. So I'm thinking now at 47, what am I going to be like at 50, 60, 70, 80 years old? How much muscle mass can I hold on to? And how high of a heart rate can I sustain for longer periods of time? That's more important to, you know, like for you, like to be able to play with your grandkids.
Yeah, that's my
Like if you
biggest
want to be able to pick
motivation.
them up. Yeah, imagine you want to pick them up.
Before getting kids, that was my reason to become healthier, to become strong, because I was fed with all these stories of my grandfather that I didn't have a chance to meet. That he died when he was like 82, but he was ripped. He was fit. He was out and working in the forest as like a forest manager, like managing the trees and everything. He was like out in the wild, like all he even like went up to the Nordics, to the mountains, just with like a fishing thread and some salt and some like a hard bread. What do you call it? It's like really Swedish.
I don't know what you got. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
like that Lord of the Rings bread.
Yeah, like Lord of the Rings bread, and just like was out there like for weeks. So that always inspired me. So I was
hardtack, they call it here.
Hardtack. That is like really common in Swedish. So some hardtack, a little bit of salt, and this fishing line. That was like all he had, just like going out for weeks out in the mountains.
That's awesome.
So, and like hearing those stories like motivated me not to get as my dad, who was like a little bit unhealthy. His body was a little bit damaged from being a police officer, been in fights, been in accidents, and just like getting fat, getting all of these diseases. He had like a Cole's disease, cancer, and like whatnot, and he eventually passed away from like having like too many diseases. So I wanted to like, but I'm happy I got that like inspiration, that image of what a healthy elder could be, because he did his last race when he was 72, and that race was on ski. Like I don't know what the term is, but like you ski out in the
biathlon
and shooting and skiing. That like he was 72 doing his last.
What a cool sport,
race.
Huh? Yeah, it like mimics hunting, right? It's mimicking a hunt.
Hunting, and he was also hunting like that during the winter season. So there's a lot of cool like winter hunting going on in Sweden.
Yeah.
So but like having that as a motivation, I would want you to like unpack what is like your driving force to become healthier, like because you've always like been like following you've always been like conscious about how you feel. And about health. Like it feels like everything is like coming down to health. But also if you could share your perspectives and what is like guiding you. You said something about like information was really hard. I was also like from that generation where I had to go to the library to learn Latin, for example, when I was studying in school, and now having everything online. And I can see this like, especially like where with all the politics that is going on, it feels like people are like not seeing the full picture. It's like Trump is either a saint and the savior, or he's Satan and Hitler. So it's just like we're in this state of, it's just completely wild. Do you agree? And like, how do we find some ground of sanity in this? This is like why I want to talk with you today, Daniel.
Yeah.
I feel that you can provide this.
All right. I want to pick that apart. First, I got
Please.
to say my motivations are a little different because I don't have kids. And
Yeah.
you and I were talking just before we started recording about this. And my wife and I have had a lot of miscarriages, 7 of them actually. And
Yeah.
we did all those at home. And, you know, I saw everything from, I hate to say it like this, but like a sort of a blood clot to like little
Yeah.
babies be birthed dead.
Yeah.
We have chosen not to do IVF, but you know, as we've gotten older and realized like, wow, like we really thought we were going to have kids and we didn't. So most people I talk to, kids and grandkids are the motivation. And I have sort of an alternative motivation and I've just kind of always had it, but I know it's not what typically drives somebody. My motivation is really spiritual, and I've gotten more comfortable over the years using this kind of language, but I know it's extremely simplistic to some people and it's going to seem like kind of silly, but I'll just say broadly, and I don't mean this like with too much of the flavor of any particular denomination or religion, but it's just sort of like, I don't think the way we're living right now is like God's way. It's
Yeah.
very obvious to me, but
Mhm.
it's not obvious to everyone. And I think there is a way that's sort of in alignment with God's way. And I'm very motivated because I see what appears to be heavy, heavy, heavy spiritual darkness in the world. And
Mhm.
I am just compelled to fight it. But I don't think the way you fight it is the way that most of the religions are fighting it. I just think that they're all pretty corrupted. I'm a Christian, by the way, but not part
Yeah.
of the Catholic Church. I'm not
Yeah.
part of
Yeah.
the Eastern Orthodox Church, and I'm definitely not part of the American Evangelical Church either. I
Yeah.
don't have an association, but I see heavy darkness and I want to battle it. And the way I battle it is by reconnecting people with nature.
Yeah.
Because what's happening is we're living increasingly in a completely artificial world. And that artificial world, it's important to understand what that means, what artificial means. So if I could pick that apart,
I'm so happy you're going here, and please pick this apart and stay on this topic. I'm so happy we went here.
Okay, cool. Well, the word artificial has the root word art. Art is like the expression of human creativity, right? And an artifact is something that's been shaped by human hands. And so something that's artificial, it's been made by people, right? So you may have heard this argument over the years because you're a philosophical dude. People will say things like, you could have an argument and be like, man, I don't think we should be making plastics. And somebody will say, well, technically plastics come from nature because all their components are found in nature. Therefore, plastic's actually natural. And you're like, no, plastic's artificial. The natural and artificial are opposites, not natural and unnatural. So let me give an example to make this a little easier to understand. Prior to the Neolithic Revolution and human beings learning metallurgy, we made all our tools out of stone. If I was to be walking in an environment like, let's say, the Levant in the Middle East, or if I was in the desert southwest of Arizona, I could be looking on the ground and seeing all kinds of pieces of flint that are rocks that are made of flint. And if I pick up one of those rocks and look at it, it's like, that's something natural. That's never been shaped by human hands. Now, if I were to pick up an arrowhead that I found on the ground that had been discarded 1,000 years ago, and I pick it up and I hold them side by side, the rock and the arrowhead are both flint. If we were to go deep, deep, deep and we would look at them molecularly, we would see that they had the exact same molecular composition and crystalline matrix. They're the same substance. So what's different about them? Well, one is natural and one's been shaped by human hands or human will. Therefore, one is natural and one is an artifact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Cool. Well, the same thing is true when it comes to food, for example. So we could go and find a wild lettuce growing here on my property, one of the wild lactuca species, and we could go to the supermarket and find a lettuce. One is natural. In other words, one has just been biologically adapting to the planet as long as lettuces have existed. And the other one is a biological artifact. It's been domesticated from the lettuce. So human will has been imposed upon it. That doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not natural anymore. It's been changed by people into the lettuces we know today. So traits that we didn't like bitterness, we bred out. Traits we did like high water content, we bred in. And we've ended up with these biological domesticated artifacts in our supermarket that's become our modern food supply. Well, when we go into the city, you talked before about growing up as a city boy. So we go into the city and we look around, almost everything's an artifact. Yeah. Almost everything. you could point to the city trees and be like, hey, well, that's natural. And it's like, is it? Or is it a horticultural domestic tree that's been changed from the original? Because usually it is. You could be like, there's dogs and cats. It's like, well, they're just domesticated biological artifacts. It's people, it's concrete, it's glass, things that started in nature but have been shaped by human will. Again, that's not a value judgment. It's just important to anchor. That's just true. You could be like, well, let's look up at the natural sky. And then you see like the plane contrails and, everything's been changed, right? From what it once was. It used to be you'd look up and you'd see the night sky and the incredible richness of stars. And even that has been largely blotted out through light pollution, so that what's happened, think about that for a moment. This is something I like to point out to people. For as long as human beings been around, so if we were to trust the biological sciences, they say human beings are 300,000 years old in our modern form. We're much older as a genus, but our individual species, 300,000 years old. For almost all of that, the stories that we told were stories about the constellations and the stars. And we would turn them into characters. And this one did this one to this one. And that's how this one got generated, right? All these stories of the gods, they were the stars. We've blotted the stars out. And now the stars are all these people in Hollywood. And now we tell the stories of what they're doing, or they tell us the stories, or we talk about the gossip that's going on there. The stars went from being these celestial entities to people. And we live in something I call artifact land, where everything around us that we interact with all day long has been shaped by human will, as an artifact. The problem with that is for young people growing up today, they don't see the fingerprint of the creator anymore. They see the fingerprint of human ingenuity. And what that leads to is this position that actually most people take, which is that human beings are the pinnacle of everything that's ever existed, and the human brain is the most sophisticated thing in the universe, and we're just the smartest thing that ever was. And that hubris is leading us to a civilization on the verge of collapse. And we've lost the humility. And this is why I connect people with nature, and just to bring it all back around, is because you go out there and you're like, shit, like we didn't make any of this. What is all this? They tell us that entropy, right? Entropy is the tendency for things to tend towards decay. Complex systems break down. The universe runs out of energy. The sun runs out of fuel, right? That's entropy. Yet we live surrounded by self-assembling, self-replicating organisms that become more complex over time in the face of entropy. So what is life? Life defies entropy. We have no explanation for this, like where this comes from. It doesn't fit into our current paradigm. The idea that nothing existed and then it exploded, and out of that explosion comes complex, self-assembling, self-replicating organisms whose fundamental genome is a written code of language, is just impossible. That's just impossible for me to accept, right? So we're living in a time that denies a higher intelligence. But the signs of that higher intelligence are everywhere around us. But what we've done by putting ourselves in artifact land is created blinders where we only see stuff that's man-made. So we think that that the pinnacle of everything is what's man-made. We think the iPhone's more sophisticated than the genome. It's really ridiculous. And it only can happen through cutting people off from nature. So when you look at people who are embedded in nature, like indigenous groups all around the world, their spiritual paradigm can't be like, we live in a world where you have like a scientific paradigm and a spiritual paradigm, and they're dissociated.
Yeah.
But you look at indigenous peoples, that you can't separate their sense of spirituality from their sense of reality.
Yeah.
Right? We do that. We'll be like, oh, well, there's what's real and then what we think of as spiritual. That's a completely new idea. And it's leading to so much destruction. And that's kind of how I've arrived at all of this stuff. And that's why for me, like hunting and fishing and foraging is not really just about like the pursuit of antlers. It's about connecting into the creation that I think has a purpose and that we're meant to participate in. But we've been tricked into giving up for a surrogate thing. It's like giving up the stars for Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. It's like not worth it. They're not that great.
Well, I agree with you, like, so 100%. So you're preaching to the choir here, but I would like you to say about like the demonic things that you see. What are some of those like demonic, like what can you call it, like rituals, or is it just like that regular concrete society is demonic, or what is demonic?
Demonic's not the term I would use, but I I'm okay with that term. I'm okay
I
with that
can't
term.
remember what you said. You said something that
I
was
was
like,
saying spiritual darkness because I think
yeah, 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 that
it's
was
like
the
a
word.
mix
So
of things.
what is like spiritual darkness? How can we spot that?
Well, the more finely tuned you are to this stuff, the more you can just sense it when you're around it. I want to say that. You know how today a lot of people are wearing like wearable devices that tell them like if they've had enough rest or what their heart rate is, right? And
Yeah.
they wake up in the morning and they're like, "Let me see how I feel."
Yeah.
It tells me how I feel, right? You know what I mean? It sounds like a joke, but I know people that trust the device telling them how much rest they've had over their own ability to. It's like, do we need that technology? Because we always were able to just feel that. Similarly, you can feel in your heart when something's not right, but people are shutting that off significantly. And so they're losing their ability. You like asked how to spot it. Part of it is like removing layers and layers of conditioning so that you can actually just be, you're calibrated to feel again. I would say one of the darkest things going on in the world today is human trafficking. I mean, we've seen things like, the Jeffrey Epstein stuff,
Yeah.
the P. Diddy stuff, the fact that, I don't want to quote numbers. I don't remember them accurately, but the number of kids that go missing just in the United States every
Yeah.
year.
It's a
And
lot.
it's starting to come out where these kids are going and what this actually is, and that there's rings and rings of people who are exploiting those children physically and sexually, and that it seems to go to the highest levels of power in the world. That'd be a pretty damn good example of spiritual darkness, I think. But I think also when we look at our tech, it's very easy to see. Again, here's what I see sort of happening. I think of the world that we live in, this, what I would call a created. And I don't mean like in 6 days, like it was like, I don't mean it like that, but life is based on a written code, a language. DNA is a language that spontaneously came out of an explosion. That doesn't make any sense. Like I've seen a lot of things explode. I've never seen like a book come out of it. It just makes no sense, right? So I believe this is like, let's use like the Matrix as an example, as like an
Mm.
analogy, an allegory. It's kind of like this matrix that we're in, we're meant to be in and experience it and live it. We're meant to love and to grow and evolve as people and experience the dynamic interplay between ourselves and all these other species that we share the world with. We're meant to experience beauty, but also sadness. Like all of this is what we're here for. But imagine like a video game. It's like a video game, and you're here to play it. And hopefully, I think you go up a level after. But because think of it this, like think about the world that you live in and think about if all of the bad parts of this life, pain, suffering, sadness, death, grief, imagine all that was gone and it was only the good. That's kind of like a heaven. You know what I mean? You're like, ooh, that would be a really nice realm to live in. Like imagine a dimension, here's our dimension, and there's a dimension just above it without all of the bad stuff, just the good stuff. Now imagine the opposite. What if it was just the bad? Suffering, pain, exploitation, human exploitation and trafficking, all this like people, predation and death. That is a realm. That's like a hell, right? And we're like in between where we kind of have a bit of both going on. And everybody's on a journey either kind of toward more of the goodness or they're headed toward more of that darkness, right? So imagine it's like a video game and you're in it and you're meant to play it, but instead of playing it, you become obsessed with figuring out what the game actually is. And so imagine players in a video game, instead of playing the game, the characters start trying to figure out what the game is made of and they start figuring out the code. And then once they figure out, oh, this isn't real, this is a code, they start trying to manipulate the code and rewrite the game from inside. And they don't realize that because they're doing that, they can never actually go to the next level in the game. They're just getting stuck in the game by trying to become the game writer themselves. That's what we're doing. So we're here in this game, and it's so obvious. It's like you must feel this with your children. The purpose of this life is way more about loving and sharing and giving and family than it is about like figuring out how to split atoms.
It's so interesting. Like when you get kids, it's like so many things just gets unimportant. It's
Yep.
like how could I even give a shit about like so many different things in the
Right.
world when I just like have this these
Yeah.
kids and it's another game. I
So if
understand.
you were to look at indigenous people around the world, you'd see, wow, they don't ever seem to really go to the next level technologically because they're actually playing the game. But we're not. We're the characters who are trying to figure out, well, what is this matter made of? Oh, it's made of these molecules. What are these molecules made of? Atoms. What are these atoms made of? And we're picking apart the creation, and then we're trying to manipulate the parts. And I always bring it back to the movie Fantasia, the famous Disney movie from back in the day. And there's there's a very famous scene called the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Merlin, the magician, his magic comes from his hat. And he leaves his hat one day and leaves, and his apprentice is Mickey Mouse. And Mickey Mouse is like, while Merlin's gone, is like, I'm going to mess with the magic. So he puts on the hat and he starts creating things. But he's just an apprentice. He doesn't have the skill to control the magic properly. So he starts manipulating it. Well, he starts to make all this mess. And then he decides, well, to fix the mess, I'm going to create mops and buckets that are alive that can clean up the mess. But by doing that, it creates more of a mess. So he has to create more magic to try to fix that mess. And it's just getting out of control into total chaos. And eventually Merlin comes back, takes the hat, kind of fixes it all, right? I think we're like that. We have started to figure out secrets about how the game was made. You know, imagine if Zuckerberg created a video game and there was players inside, but those players were given free will and they used that free will to try to hack the game. That's kind of what I'm saying we've done.
Yeah.
And we think that through that, we're going to achieve immortality, right? That's the kind of the goal. If you listen to the people in tech, what are they really talking about at the highest level? They want to achieve immortality in the body, right? So they want to figure out either immortality in the body or how to download consciousness into a machine where it would then be free. They're trying to break free from God's game that was created to evolve our soul. That's kind of what I think is going on here. And so,
what do you think are the consequences of this? Because, like, as you said, like with Mickey Mouse, he was like using his magic to fix things, but the more he fixed, the more problems he was getting. Like, we are trying to solve we are creating like electric cars. That is just like having another set of issues. We are trying to achieve immortality. We are trying to colonize Mars, as Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk, I think he should go out to the forest a little bit because he looks a little bit pale and doesn't
the greatest villain of our era.
Like, I totally agree. Can we speak about like how he's a villain?
Yeah. But let me just say this. If you want to know the consequences, just turn on the news, right?
Yeah.
The consequences, just turn on the news. You're like, there's the consequences, right? Because it's interesting. Like, for instance.
But people don't get that correlation. That these are
well, let me give an example. Let me give you an interesting example.
Mouse and doing all these magic.
Yeah. So let's say that one of the things that we've been able to figure out through science, for instance, is how to reduce child mortality. So on Earth, for this last 300,000 years, the typical rate of child mortality is 50%. I mean, could you imagine today? Think about that. Like it's only recently this has changed, right? In the last couple hundred years. Imagine if half of the babies that you knew being born died.
Yeah.
That's life. That's actually life on Earth for humans.
Yeah. That was my grandmother.
Yeah. Her generation.
She's from Egypt. That was like normal.
Normal.
6 kids.
So we figured out we got around that, right? We figured out how to stop that. Now what's the problem? Shit. We're at 8 billion people and it's growing. Now we're overpopulating and unable to supply enough resources for all these people. Now we fixed one problem, but it created an even bigger problem, right? Because now we're actually looking at ecological disaster. Turns out that 50% rate, while horrible and sad and awful and difficult, look, as somebody who's been through reproductive grief, and my brother, who I'm very close with, his daughter died at 30 days old. I mean, I know a lot of parents who've lost children, a lot of parents that have lost children. I don't say this like to be cavalier. I'm just saying it's interesting. We didn't want to have that kind of grief. So we figured out a solution that's leading to way more grief. Big picture, planetarily, worse, right? That's just an example of when we go, I don't like how this nature works. I'm going to fix this. Right. Another way to say that would be like the Industrial Revolution, or depending on how you think about it, the industrial revolutions that have happened. It's like, hey, I don't like that I have to do all this work. So, human beings had a lot of work to do, whether it was carrying water back to the village or it was the endless amount of food processing that was incredibly physically demanding, whether you were cutting a bison or a mammoth, or you had to grind, grain or seeds on a mortar and pestle or mano and metate, or you had to make cordage and rope. Like all day you're using your body. Then we get into this period of time, and I'm talking even 150 years ago. Then we get into this period of time, the Industrial Revolution, we start making these machines. It's like the first time that we've had machines to do the work. What's the result? Obesity, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, physically weak people unable to support their own body weight. That's the result. So yeah, we fixed all that. Oh, this hard labor I have to do. Now, those of us who don't want to be weak and falling apart, now we have to go run on a hamster wheel at the gym in order to overcome the problems created by the solution that we made. It's like, how much of this do we want? How much of this do we want to stack? And the problem is, the more you stack higher and higher and higher, the more tipsy-turvy things get.
Yeah.
So now we're all looking out at a world that we're like, I think most of us feel like, geez, how long can this stuff go on here? Is this going to collapse? Can it just go on infinitely? I'm amazed at the hubris of the tech oligarchs, because they talk as if this will just go on forever. You mentioned Egypt a little bit. So instructive. Yeah. I mean, you look at Egypt, like for anybody who thinks like, oh yeah, the downtown was just the pyramids. It's like, no, dude, this is an extensive civilization. And it wasn't a desert. It was a fertile. I always tell people like, hey, you know what caused the Egypt to go from a fertile green environment to a desert? Organic agriculture did that.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Well, they didn't have nitrogen fertilizer or pesticides. Yeah. They're growing everything organically, right? It's 4,000 years ago. It's organic. They desertified the whole landscape. This is what's caused the collapse of every civilization, is actually their farming practices. One of the major factors is they destroy their own soil, right? We destroyed our soil a long time ago, but we found through chemistry how to keep it producing food that doesn't have much value but looks decent, right? That's like anyway, I just think what's happening is, I don't think this can go on forever. I think that we actually might be nearing a major change. And I'll add one more piece and then I'll go on to answer about Elon Musk. But you know how I just said that the Industrial Revolution led to a physical decline that we all, I don't need to explain it too much. We all know what I mean. People are physically weak and fat, basically. It's fascinating. We're in this era of Ozempic now, because in Wegovia, right? These GLP-1 antagonists, we have created so many calories that we were a species that always struggled to get enough calories. We worked hard to get enough calories to survive. And we've figured out how to create so much, again, solve the problem. Now we have so many calories that people are dying from it. They're so overfed that now we have to take drugs to reduce the appetite, because we're surrounded by so much excess calories. So every time we solve a problem, we create multiple problems. And that's compounds and compounds and compounds on itself, right? Okay, Elon Musk. I don't know him. I don't know what it would be like to sit down in a room and talk with him. I don't like I don't want to just talk smack here about somebody I don't know. But talks wolf in sheep's clothing, I think. Says things that sound really great, but what's he actually doing, right? That's such an important lesson. Earlier when you were asking, and I was sort of talking about people losing the ability to like perceive anymore. They need their watch to tell them how they feel. It used to be this thing we knew, like, hey, don't just listen to what someone says, watch what they do. Well, when you watch what he does, you're like, oh, this is an enemy of humanity. He's the guy who's creating the human brain computer chip interface with Neuralink. He's creating the Terminator-style robots, the humanoid robots that you can soon have in your house. He's creating the self-driving cars. He's trying to take human beings away from the planet that they're from to Mars. He's surrounded our planet with satellites that are beaming Wi-Fi at us constantly so that there'll be nowhere left on the Earth where you don't have service. All these things that if you're completely absorbed into artifact land, you're like, oh, this is great. Yeah. But as soon as you get out of artifact land, you're like, whoa, none of that's good. I don't want any of that. That only leads to diminishment of the species, of our species. I think he's, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of what he's doing. Yeah. There's times where I hear him and I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. But then it's like, wait a second. My discernment kicks back in. And it's like, this guy wants to literally plug you into the matrix, which is like, again, spiritual darkness. Yeah. I call that spiritual darkness, like robbing us of our humanity and maybe of our ability to even perceive what's real. Under the guise of helping you, which is always how villains do it.
Yeah, but do you feel that we are in that state already? That people like have a hard time to perceive what is real? I think we are already there. It's like we are going to the grocery store, we are eating food. That's it. Like nothing is real anymore.
Yeah, it's artifact land, but the next stage is a digital version of that.
Like the
So we're still,
metaverse. Just
yeah,
like
so we're
being
still pretty,
like really connected up to that. Because when I was
yeah,
a little kid, I was watching like manga movies. I was like really small, and like during that time, maybe these movies were from the 70s, and these had like characters that were plugging up themselves
yeah.
to this like dream world where they were the hero and they got the girls, and they were just like, and then they couldn't like distinguish the difference between the real world and the artificial world. Like this
Yeah.
was like in the
Well, that's because this is a multi-thousand-year-old plan, I think.
Yeah.
Again, my
Let's dive
bias is
deep into the plan here.
I'm a follower of Christ, right? So I
Yeah.
think here's how I imagine it. Christ's Father builds this video game we live in for us out of love so that we can evolve and come into a higher level through free will. But there's a rebellion that happens. And through that rebellion, through what was called sin initially, which has been turned into all kinds of cultural baggage, but the idea is through that sin, we got trapped in this dimension and then we can't get out. We're actually trapped here. So a solution's generated. Imagine again, Mark Zuckerberg creates a metaverse and there's characters in there and the characters are trapped by some other being who's tricked them to give up their free will and trap them in there. So Zuckerberg says, I know what I'll do. I'll download my son into this game as a character and he'll go in there and he'll actually sacrifice himself as a way of ransoming those souls who want their free will back out of the game. That's who I think Christ was. He actually came into our dimension from another dimension and ransomed people. Why I'm saying this is because I think this plan to enslave humanity into this digital space is very, very old. To us, it's very new because we've only recently got this technology. But the further you look back and you look at what all of these mystery religions that we often call like secret societies, you look at like what they've actually been up to, this stuff goes way back. It's so old.
How far back does it go?
Well, it's really interesting when you look at Göbekli Tepe.
Is it pre-biblical?
Oh yeah. Well, because the Bible, written language is 6,000 years old. Think about that. Like, here's something I think about a lot that I find really fascinating and funny. I'll watch myself. I'm sure you do it too. It's like kids these days with their TikTok. They don't even know like how, when I was a kid, right? We do a lot of that. When I was a kid, we didn't need self-driving bicycles. We rode bicycles with our own legs, right? Stuff like that.
I've become that man.
Yeah, me too. Picture 6,000 years ago where it's like, oh, these kids with their written language. When I was a kid, we memorized all our stories and we spoke them around the fire. Now everyone's just writing them down and reading these books and it's rotting their brains. But here we are 6,000 years later, you know what I mean? Language is really old, but written language, the earliest we see is, I think, in Sumeria with the cuneiform. So it's not really that old. I'm sure you're familiar with this Younger Dryas theory that we get from Graham Hancock and some of those guys, that there was a cataclysmic event, that they correspond to the biblical flood. And I think that's something that happened. And I think that prior to the whatever that flood or that impact event was, there was a very advanced civilization here on Earth. I mean, it's just very obvious. It's like, if you just look at these stone structures throughout the world, I've only seen a handful of them. I've not been to Egypt. I mean, obviously the Great Pyramid is one of these stunning examples of, it's just astonishing because it's not just the big rocks. It's the astronomy and the mathematics and it's all of it combined. I've been to Peru and seen Saxe Woman where you're like, okay, I don't even, this is impossible. How are these structures built? Why are they everywhere in the world? There's clearly something that was going on and it ended and we kind of started over, right? I think this thing we're dealing with goes back before that and is all connected to that. But I think that this plan to slowly enslave humanity over time, I don't know how long it's been running, but it's been running a while. It's a very, very sophisticated plan. I think that the people who are major players in it, let's say Elon Musk or Bill Gates or George Soros or all these characters that it's now come to light have been manipulating the world from behind the scenes. And then who knows all the people whose names we'll never know. These are like the celebrity oligarchs, right?
Yeah.
But I think they're all deceived too. So it's like Lord of the Rings is like this, right? So you have the 9 rings created for men, and all those kings who received those rings were deceived. There was one ring more powerful than them all, and they all actually were thinking they were kings. They were pawns.
Yeah.
Think that's what's going on here, and that there is a force working against humanity. And I think you can see that because what's it want to do? It wants to stamp out humanity. Look, like we're the last. Well, I don't actually, you tell me if you're part of this generation or not. I'm 46. I remember a time with no internet.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. We're the last ones, bro.
Yeah, we're the last ones.
Think about that. So after us is a new generation of human that in retrospect down the road might actually be kind of its own subspecies in some way because they're augmented, informationally augmented through technology. Kids today can't even understand they're not being social media, no less trying to understand what it was like. Again, like think about when I was 15, I had a voracious mind, you know, I always wanted to learn. So I was always at the library. And I remember I would have some question in mind. I love the word question because it contains the word quest. So the word question, actually, if you look at it, it says quest I on. Like I am on a quest.
Never thought
I would
about
have
that. That's so
I would have
cool.
a lot of words are like that, right? It's tricky language. I had a lot of questions and I would go and I would want to research a question. So I'd go and I remember you'd go through the analog card catalog to try to like find your books. There was no digital interface. First computer I ever used was at a library actually. But I remember before when it was just that card system and I'd go get 5, 6, 10 books. I'd go sit down at a big table and you'd be going through each book trying to find. And when you found that thing you were looking for, it was so valuable. You'd put so much work in, you'd never forget it. Now I look up something I'm interested in, I read it and I forget it in 6 minutes because it's so cheap. It's so cheap. I can just get it. It's like on drip, easy to get. So can't remember it. I used to know dozens of phone numbers. I don't know. I can barely remember my wife's phone number now because it's so easy to just check it. Why keep it in my head, right? So here we have this generation now that in the same way that we've been physically diminished through the Industrial Revolutions, being cognitively diminished through this AI revolution, and pretty soon human creativity is going to be largely stamped out. As somebody on YouTube or as somebody in the podcast space, how much have you already seen AI? I'm sure you're using it in your editing. I'm sure you're using it in all of your show notes. Everybody's using it for thumbnails now. We're seeing it in art. We're seeing it in music. We're seeing it in writing. We're seeing it in everyone's newsletters. People are losing already, and it's been about 6 months of AI has been really accessible? No. Yeah. And we're maybe a year and we're already losing our ability to do a whole bunch of things. Yeah. And it's just getting going, right? What is this force that wants to stamp out human physicality and human creativity? And then when you look, like, I feel so lucky. Like sometimes I think, wow, like I was born in the United States, man. I mean, there's a lot of bad here, but like I gotta feel pretty lucky to have been born in the free world, you know? Because I could have been born in Shanghai and be living in a social credit system that's a total dark dystopia, where the forces in the United States that want to stamp out humanity's spark, at least is concealed there. It's kind of like out in the open. North Korea, it's like out in the open. Like there's no, do you remember like during COVID where China was flying the drones around saying like, resist your urge for freedom?
Yeah. That was like so horrible.
Yeah. What is that? So what's that? What is that force? That's what I'm talking about. What is that? You know, what is that Sauron from Lord of the Rings energy?
Yeah.
That's after humanity. And notice that its obsession is instead of love. So when you look at Christ's message, it's really interesting because prior to Christ, this idea of like loving your neighbor as yourself, loving your enemy, how about that? That wasn't really something that people had thought a lot about. Like if you look at North America prior to Christendom coming here, and I'm a huge, as you know from my work, like I'm such a deep fan of the indigenous life way, but it had some real dark shit too. You didn't treat your neighboring tribe with love. You'd fillet their skin off, roll them in salt, set them on fire, and make them run while you shot arrows at them. You think I'm joking? Like read about it. Read about how tribes treated each other, cutting the soles of the other person's feet off and making them run through a field while you. One of the worst ones is making thousands of little incisions, filling them all over their body with wood chips and lighting it on fire. Can you imagine something like that?
Oh,
This
shit.
idea of loving your enemy, praying for your enemy. This is Christ's appearance on earth was so powerful that it split time in half. Think about it. From BC to AD,
Yeah.
the whole world changes through this new paradigm of how to live. Now it's taken a long time to play out. I mean, we only abolished slavery pretty recently here in the United States. It's taken a long time to play out. And just like every religion, the churches have taken it and bastardized it and turned it and done all kinds of horrible things in the name of it. But the idea stands in the face of the concepts and the paradigm stands in the face of what's happening in the world today. The opposite of love would be like ego, right? Like it's that sense of only me. I'm so guilty of this, by the way. I was raised so selfishly. Like I'm not good at this. My wife is incredible at this, and I'm terrible at it. My wife is a very selfless, loving person, and she's constantly like, "Wow, Daniel, you kind of walked right by that old lady. Well, you could have held the door open." Like I need constant reminders about this, right? But look at the music today, for instance. Like look at hip hop music. And what is the message? It's just, I'm this, you're not. I have this, you don't. I'm this much better than you. Like the lyrics, you're like, it's insane, the level of ego. Or you look at culture and you see what's happening. It's like everything, it's not just artificial, but it's such an obsession with the self. It's the butt implants, it's the Botox, it's the Ozempic, it's the endless bicep implants and just fakeness, ego, myself at the expense of others. That's not natural to people because we don't see that in indigenous tribes. Like they're all about the community and the family. So like, what is this? What is this force at work in the world? So to go back to your earlier question, how do you spot it? It's like, man, it's all around us, right? And the question, what happens is a lot of people spend time going like, do you think there's good and evil?
Yeah.
And it's like, no, like let's ask the next
Are you
question.
asleep?
Yeah, it's like when people are like, I don't know, do you believe in energy? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, let's move on. Like to how do you use the energy that you have, right? Do you believe in good and evil? It's like, dumb question. What is this evil that we can see? What are we supposed to do in the face of it? Because it's all around us. And for sure, it wants to cut us off from nature. It wants to poison us with bad food. It wants to sterilize us. It wants to stamp out your creativity. It wants to upload you into a machine. It wants to commodify you. It wants to tax you to the point of breaking. Like, what is all that? And how are we supposed to live in the face of it? I think that is.
But do you ever go to the Bible to get the explanation for what is all of that? Like, so in
Yeah,
the Bible,
yeah,
it is the devil. You mentioned COVID there. So COVID was like such an interesting period of time where I saw my friends that were like devoted Muslims or Christians could like decipher what was going on according to the Bible or the Quran. So they could just
yeah,
like, for example, about like the end of times. And we also have all of these Hollywood movies that are called the end game. This is the final days and the apocalypse now and what
yeah, yeah.
like this end game mentality is like all around us.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this also like from like COVID. If you spell that backwards, so in Hebrew that meant possessed by a demon. And I looked that up. I googled that, and it's
Yeah,
actually said like possessed by a demon. So all of these things, like the further I dove down into like these different rabbit holes during COVID, because we had a lot of time then, like I could see like friends that were completely atheist, they started believing in God
yeah,
because that they were seeing like these demonic,
yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
really horrible forces
Mm-hmm.
injecting us with whatever they injected us with, saw that it was sterilizing people, like just keeping us as dogs like in these containers which are called like homes. And like there were so many things going on, but I could also see like the people that had some form of rootedness in religion, like for example like Islam or Christianity, maybe the Jews also, because like we have a lot of similarities there, could see that this is a play by that evil force. And
Yeah,
they were like really quick to say, I'm not going to inject myself, I'm not going to comply with any of this bullshit. I'm just going to live my life, and I'm going to resist this.
Yeah, you're going to see more and more of that. I mean, to me,
this is growing. Like this
yeah.
year, Bibles, like the physical book Bible, has increased in sales with 22%. I heard that from Candace Owens.
Okay, man,
So
she's
people
brave,
are
huh?
like
She's brave.
really going there, like and
Yeah.
talking about religion is not as taboo anymore. In Sweden, if you say that you're religious or you believe in God, you are completely woo-woo, because like Sweden is like one of those countries that might be as like a like this is our playground to see what ideas will like take effect. Like they are
Test New World Order test ground.
it's like a test ground.
Yeah,
100%
Canada too,
test ground. And
particularly I'd
Canada,
say
and they are super
Toronto.
close. They are
Yeah,
super close to each other, and
yeah.
how they are like in their where they are in the world. They're like quite high up, and their flora and fauna is like really similar, and like their social structure, how much taxes they are paying, their ideologies. Church is like kicked out from the system completely. So it's not even a Christian country anymore since like a couple of years ago back, like maybe 20 years back. So what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, wow. I think all this, okay. I think that the way that these scriptures have been interpreted is messy. And I believe to understand the Bible, there's a book that's not in there, but is in the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, the book of Enoch, that I think is a master key that you need to understand in order to really unlock the whole big picture story of the Bible. And Enoch there's a lot of reasons it's not included in the canon, but I think there's a really good case to be made that the book First Enoch, so there's 3 of them, but the first one might have been an oral tradition from before Moses, because Moses wrote down the first 5 books of the Bible. Prior to that, there's all this history and obviously oral tradition. So the book of Enoch says that there was a class of angels called the Watchers whose job was to watch over humanity, but that the Watchers became lustful of our life here, and they made a pact, 200 of them together made a pact to come down to earth and mate with human women. It doesn't say how they do that. So I don't know if that's through technology, through genetic sequencing, through actual carnal intercourse. No, it doesn't explain, but it says they come down here and they mate with human women and they produce offsprings that are giant, way bigger than regular people, and that the world becomes incredibly chaotic due to these Nephilim, they're called, who are all over the world. What a lot of people don't realize, and this is especially true, again, because if you don't know this book, which I'll have to say this, the book is extensively alluded to by Jesus Christ himself. Then it's also quoted by Peter, who was Jesus's top disciple. And then Jude, in the book of Jude, who is Jesus's biological brother, quotes the book directly. This book pre-existed Christ by a few hundred years. The oral tradition is much older, but the written down version precedes Christ. And to understand the big picture, you kind of need to understand this whole thing. So anyway, these most modern Christians think the flood happened because human beings had become so sinful. But that's not what's going on in the book of Enoch. And it's actually in Genesis 6, you see this too. The flood is to get rid of all of the offspring of the Watchers that they had with humans, because it was like an ungodly act. And so the flood is to destroy their civilization. A lot of people think that all of those ancient monolithic cities we see all over the world were built by them. And that's why there was a cataclysm that reset the world. Also, the word demon, according to Enoch, refers to the souls of those specific offspring only. So demons aren't like fallen angels. Demons aren't even that powerful. They're just that what happened was the angels, the Watchers that did this, were put in eternal chains, it says, in this deep, dark place. But their children, the angels, were from another dimension, so their souls can't be stuck on earth. But their children, the Nephilim, they were born on earth, so their souls can't leave the earth, but now they don't have bodies. So their souls roam around on earth as demons, looking for people to try to get into or to create mischief or disease or problems in the world. And so that's what demons are, according to the Second Temple era Judaism that Christ and his disciples were part of. So I think when I look at it from now my learned 21st century perspective, it seems to me like some beings might have come to Earth and interfered with our evolutionary process, or interfered with our genome, or spliced themselves into our genome in some way. And that the battle that's been going on this Earth is like a kind of interdimensional battle. And one thing that I take from that is that we're really important. That's so cool. Like, we're really important. Why are these higher dimensional entities battling over us? Like, we're important in some way. And that's so beautiful to me. But I think that it's an interdimensional thing. I'm very fascinated by this idea of, like, we live in 3 dimensions. Have you ever read the book Flatland?
No, never.
Let me put that on your reading list. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
a thin booklet, I think I want to say from the 1800s, written by a mathematician theologist. The book's premise is that there's this 2-dimensional world. Again, we live in 3 dimensions. We have a height dimension, but this dimension's like a sheet of paper, if you can imagine. It has length and width, but no height. And all the beings in Flatland are shapes. So they're circles and triangles and dodecahedrons and stuff, but they're all shapes that move around on a single plane. For them to see each other, when they look at each other, all they see is a line. Whether you're a circle or a triangle, you can't tell. You just see a line. So in order to see what shape somebody is, you'd have to go all the way around them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? And then you'd be like, oh, he's flat on this line. Oh, he's flat here. He's flat here. Oh, he's a triangle. Or, oh, this is a circle. The story has all these other components, but that's all you need to know for now. What ends up happening is a 3-dimensional being finds Flatland and wants to interact with it. He's a sphere. He tries to put himself into the 2-dimensional world. So as he enters it, he's a sphere, a ball. When he first enters it, he looks to them like a circle. Does that make sense? As he penetrates the plane with his sphere, he's a circle. But as he penetrates deeper, the circle gets bigger and bigger and bigger till it hits the equator of the circle. And then as he goes through and drops down through Flatland, he gets a smaller and smaller and smaller circle. Well, they've never seen anything like that. Mm. So they think, oh, this guy's a circle. And he's trying to say, no, I'm way more than a circle. And they're like, I don't get it. Okay, now imagine that. Imagine a world like that. And I want to go interact with Flatland. So I say to these creatures, hey, I'm going to enter your world now. Check me out. And let's say I stick 3 fingers down into that world. They're going to be like, oh, you're 3 circles. It's like, no, man, I'm way more than 3 circles. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In the story, this square gets lifted up and he has a vision of 3 dimensions. Mm. And he's like a psychedelic experience. He goes back into Flatland and he's trying to tell everybody about the 3-dimensional world. And they all think he's a kook and a quack and he's lost his mind. Later in the story, the sphere has an experience of a 4th dimension, right? And it blows his mind. So you can kind of see this idea. Salvador Dali painted this famous picture of the crucifixion. He was a Catholic. He painted a picture of Christ on what's called a hypercube. This is so cool to me. You know that one? Okay, so a hypercube, for your audience, if you picture a box like a shipping box, a cube, if you unfold the box like lay it flat, it becomes basically the shape of a cross, right? So it's actually made up of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares in the shape of a cross, and then you can fold that up into a cube. Well, a hypercube is a 4th dimensional cube. We know it exists mathematically, but you and I can never get our head around what it actually, it's called a tesseract. We can't perceive it in the same way that a 2-dimensional being can't perceive a 3-dimensional being. I think what's going on here is there's a 4th or 5th or 6th or higher order dimensional world, and there are beings in those worlds who keep interacting with our world. And when they do, we can't quite understand what it is. When people have visions of those dimensions or have been taken to those dimensions, they come back here, they sound crazy when they try to explain it, but we can feel it all around us if you still have the ability to feel. But more and more, like we talked about, people are getting too calloused in the heart to be able to feel. And so, but I think that we're dealing with higher dimensional things. And I think, so back to COVID and all of that went on, we're seeing, I think, a lot of these biblical predictions, these prophecies happen. You know, we were talking about Elon Musk. It's really interesting. In Revelation chapter 13 is the story of the Antichrist and the false prophet. Yeah. And the false prophet, so it's interesting because it talks about the first beast. He's the Antichrist. He receives a mortal wound to the head, but he lives.
All right.
Okay. And then the second beast, called the false prophet, ushers the first beast, who received a mortal wound but survived. He ushers him into power. He does this this false prophet does great signs in front of all the people, even calling fire down from heaven. I remember watching
Shit.
Elon land his rocket, and the whole world watched as fire came down from heaven.
Yeah.
What he ends up doing is he goes on to create, he gets the people to build an image of the beast, of the first beast, and he's able to breathe life into this image. So he's able to create some machine bot that comes to life. Now, if there was somebody on Earth who could bring a robot to life, like who might that be?
That'd be,
That could also call down fire from heaven, right?
yeah.
And then the other thing that that false prophet does is he creates a system where everybody receives a mark on the right hand or forehead without which they cannot participate in the economy. It says they can't buy or sell. And then it says this really interesting thing. It says that this next part's for those with wisdom. It says that the beast's name has a number, and that number is 666. We've all heard that part.
We all heard that part.
Yeah. So the Revelation's written in Greek, and in Greek there's this ancient Greece, there was this concept of gematria, where that's where every letter in the alphabet has a numerical value. So you could calculate someone's name with a numeric value based on the letters in their name. If you take Neuralink and you put it through Greek gematria, it is 666.
It is 666. Yeah.
So that's really fascinating to me. Now, listen, I'm not saying that Elon is that person or Trump is that person from the scripture. It's very possible, like other people through time, they're kind of like a type and shadow of something, like of an archetype or something to come even. So I'm not saying they are that, but it sure is interesting to watch characters step into roles that are already like predicted and written. It's fascinating. And when I see those correlations with Elon, I just think like, I just don't think this person's really what he appears to be. Initially, it says that the whole world marvels and follows after the beast.
Yeah.
And this is where I think it's going to get interesting, because in the very end of the whole story, Christ returns for those people who've kept the faith, essentially. And I don't think that means the people who go to church every Sunday. I think that means the people who remain godly in their hearts.
Yeah.
And the rest of the world turn their weapons against him. So they've been so completely deceived that they see their own salvation, their own savior, their own way out as the enemy. And that's kind of how I see us getting positioned today. And that's what's the most disturbing thing, is I'm noticing that more and more people are becoming themselves enemies of humanity by embracing, because pretty soon, like how long will it be? Like right now, my wife and I have been talking a lot about this. We're big in this gym culture right now. And so you look at people and you'll think like, how does that person look that way? And then you realize like performance enhancing drugs are becoming very common. Really? So you see people, you're like, wow, he looks great. And then you're like, yeah, he's on steroids though.
It's juiced.
Or like, wow, how'd that person lose all that weight? Well, they're on Ozempic now. Like, how's that person's skin look so good? Well, they're having collagen injections and Botox. Like everything is. So how long until people start to use CRISPR technology on themselves? Like you get gene edited, right? Once you get gene edited, you're not a natural human anymore. How long until we are tricked into using our own free will to cease being human? It's not hard to imagine a world like that, where we're now something else. And early in the Bible, it says that we were given dominion over this world. Do we still have dominion if we're no longer human? It's an interesting question. So I think we're facing some of the most powerful moments. And I think, as you were just alluding to, there's going to be a strong polarization. Some people are going to go like, no, I'm out, I'm on God's side. And other people are going to be like, no way, man, I want CRISPR technology to gene edit myself so I can have better abs, right? It's just, that's just like what we're going into,
But it feels like a small minority is like going to go like on God's side.
Yeah.
Like because during COVID, it was such an interesting time, because you could see what you were talking about, where people were turning against the people that were like seeing the truth, that were seeing the mark of the beast. So this is like how like I came into COVID from a whole nother angle, because I've been studying naturopathic medicine. I've been like studying like side effects of vaccines, like since way back, not during, this was nothing new for me. And about like the whole structure with the pharmaceutical industries and the issues that they have. And I'm not trusting them, because I haven't needed to go to a doctor for 20 years, because I've been taking care of myself with exercise, with how my lifestyle, with what and if I come down with something, I can heal myself pretty much like 100%.
Not to mention, you were looking around and you weren't seeing what they were telling you were supposed to be seeing, with people dying everywhere and sick
I
everywhere.
wasn't seeing it, but also like this is something I took from Timothy Ferris, 2007, that I went on this media detox. So I went on a media detox and I never went back. So from 2007, I haven't like consumed. So I didn't get like scared properly. A little bit in the beginning, they were like, yeah, Bill Gates, like this video on him on TED Talks, like speaking about this was 2015, that he predicted that there's going to be a huge pandemic. And during COVID, I didn't know like how huge of a scumbag he is. But then when I started like listening to like some of the podcasts I've been following for a long time, just like showing me, okay, this is what is going on. So how is this planned actually? Maybe because you can see that in Hollywood movies, and the concept of what do they call that, like pre-programming?
Yeah, predictive programming.
Predictive programming, thank you. So that whole thing became like so interesting, but is so tightly connected to the scriptures.
Yeah.
Do you see what it means?
Yeah.
So you could like, and you had like the patterns, had the number 666. You had like so many things going
You know about
on.
Agenda 201 that happened? You familiar with that part of the story?
Yeah, the Agenda 201, where they like just like
they war gamed all of this.
They war gamed
literally like just months before the whole thing rolled out. By the way, what they're war gaming now, just so people know. So Event 201 was the Bill Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. It was John Hopkins and
WHO.
The WHO teamed up to war game what would happen if a coronavirus got out into the population and caused a pandemic. And then magically this happens like 6 months later, and it's Bill Gates, the World Health Organization, and John Hopkins, who are the ones that we hear about through the whole pandemic, who are like saving everybody.
Yeah,
because they had just practiced that.
Yeah.
Their current wargaming is around grid down, right? So it's the failure of the electric grid. So people should be aware that the idea is a hacking job that shuts down people's access to power and communications. And so for whatever that's worth.
It's so interesting how a few like Swedish programs on TV are like having like this theme in their programs. Mm-hmm. How would you survive a power grid shutdown?
Yeah, right. So it's in the zeitgeist. So the other thing that people should keep in mind, it's funny because when you bring this up, everybody's like conspiracy theorist, blah, blah, blah. But it's like every town in America that you drive into. So, here in the USA, what you typically have is like a town, rural, like where I live in Maine, driving through a town, and then you've got like a bunch of woods you're driving through, and then it's another town, and then more woods, and then another town, and it just goes on and on and on forever like that. Every time you drive into a town, there's a sign there for the Freemasons.
Really?
And the sign, every town. I'm saying every town in America.
Is this only in America, or can I see this in Sweden? Because
I don't know if you can see this in Sweden.
We have Freemasons in Sweden.
Sure. You may have these signs, I don't know, but every town has a sign at the outskirt of the town that'll say Freemasons, free and accepted with their symbol, and then it'll say the times that they meet. And a lot of times you'll see all these other societies too, from ones that are a little less creepy like the Rotary Club or the Lions Club to ones that are real creepy like the Order of the Eastern Dawn, where it's literally it's a pentagram. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Okay, now these are in every town. And who's members? Well, lots of people, lots of regular people, but it's also the judges, the attorneys, the police chiefs, the fire chiefs, the town clerk, the town manager, the mayor, the governor. It's all of the leadership, and the who's who, the players are often a big percentage of the players in any given town are members. Well, if you have that in every single town, and then you can follow that like a pyramid up and up and up to higher and higher levels of the organization that become international, people often say like, well, conspiracies are impossible. Like you can't control that much, keep that much secrecy. It's like, are you joking? Look at the military. At the highest level of the military, there are a handful of people in a room having a conversation, and then they disseminate that out through their management system down a pyramid, and eventually at the very lowest level, the grunts go out and they implement that, and they have no idea what they're implementing.
Yeah.
They don't know what strategy's been discussed in those meetings. That's how a company works. The Walmart employee has no idea what's being discussed in the highest Walmart boardroom with a handful of people who then disseminate that out to their regional managers, who disseminate that out to their local managers, who disseminate that out to the store managers, who tell the employees what to do. This is so obvious when people go, that's impossible. It's like, that's how everything in the world works, you idiots. Like that's how it all
when
works.
I hear people say that's impossible, I was like, just look at McDonald's. How the hell do you think a Big Mac just like tastes the same in Stockholm as in Austin?
Every fry you get is a conspiracy.
Every fry you get.
Right, exactly. So it's important to remember that most of the US presidents, that most highly positioned characters are members in these societies or related societies. And when you start looking at what these societies are into, by the way, it gets very weird, right? Because you're like, okay, most of them are into Gnosticism. If you follow it back, you find out that there's a Luciferian doctrine. They worship Baphomet, who's the character most of us look at and would go, oh, that's Satan or the devil. Yeah. There's the Knights Templar is all connected to this. These were the people out trying to scoop up all of the ancient artifacts from the Bible, like anything from like the Ark of the Covenant or the Shroud of Turin. Like these were the people who went and got all that stuff and reclaimed Jerusalem. Like this thing you said, like about the biblical thing, it's infused everywhere. So maybe the average citizen in Sweden or Canada or the United States has been convinced to be like an atheist and think all that's silly. But when you start digging into the higher level of stuff, you realize, oh, they don't think that's silly at all. The management kind of takes this stuff seriously. Pretty fascinating, sure. Right? Yeah. So yeah, we're living in a really interesting moment, and I don't know how long we'll have the ability to see it all as clearly as we see it, because right now we have like such relatively free access to information. Like,
but it feels like we are in this time where it's getting like more and more like shown. They don't even bother to hide it anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
That is what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah. And I mean, there's some great examples of it too, right? And you see it
it's
particularly
like Elon Musk with the X symbol, with his like devil suit.
Thank you. What is his thumbnail on his own? His thumbnail that he uses.
He just recently changed that, but it looks like a symbol is the Grok symbol, but the Grok symbol also looks like Saturn. And Saturn, like the story about Saturn and how that is like maybe the symbol for
the dark star, the dark sun,
the dark star. So like the symbolism is all over X, everywhere. The platform, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, like everybody. So it's not even hidden anymore. The thing is that I think is just that so many people haven't even started to dig in this. They are still just like living the rat lifestyle. And they are just like going on with their business, cracking up some Ozempic, trying to just live,
Yeah. And try to stay afloat, right? It's like, try to stay afloat. It's, I'll tell you this, like as an entrepreneur, the amount of money that I make 5 years ago was pretty comfortable. 5 years later, I haven't really had a raise, and it's not the same anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember when $100 was like a pretty good amount that's like a big bill. But today, spend $100 US very easily. It's just gone, So things are getting more and more challenging. So people are just trying to keep their heads above water, right? They've got kids, they've got work, they've got their hobbies. You're still trying to just enjoy life a little bit. And when you see somebody at the MTV Music Awards, dancing on a dildo over a pentagram, and you just think like, oh, it's just art, right? Because you don't have time to like dig into what they're really telling you.
Yeah.
But I think that Hollywood has also played a major role in this, because Hollywood's been how we've disseminated a lot of Luciferianism. By the way, there's Satanism and there's Luciferianism.
Yeah. What's the difference? I don't know.
Well, I think Satanism is kind of like the overt, like kind of more corny, like we're worshiping the devil.
Yeah. Okay.
Luciferianism is the idea of human enlightenment, because Luce means light. Lucifer means the light bringer or the light bearer.
And in the Bible, he was also like the angel of light.
It's very vague in the Bible. This whole concept of a devil and Satan, if you read the scriptures, very vague. It's not laid out as plainly as people have come to think it is, nor is the concept of heaven or hell or any of that. It's all very vague in there. It's not very clearly enumerated. But think about in the course of your lifetime, how much this idea of humans evolving to the next level has come into the zeitgeist, this next stage of human evolution. We hear that stuff all the time. this idea of the Enlightenment. Through information and knowledge and science, we're going to become something more. We're going to evolve to another level. That's called Luciferianism. And that's why I adhere to this rewilding principle, because to me, this is this battle. So I think we were meant to live very close to nature in a very simple way, because life isn't about progress. Life is about the evolution of the heart.
Agree.
It's something else. It's not about this idea of progress. Look, it's so interesting because the political party that was just sort of decimated in the United States is people say the Democrats, but it's actually the progressives. They believe that progress is getting away from what humans naturally are. That's why they love things like transgenderism, because all they want to do is change what we are constantly, right? It's like change who we are and what we are, because it's a rebellion against God. Right?
But
it's like
is it like there's another like angle on that, is also like when you are transgender, you look like that character, the Luciferian character, or this Satan
Baphomet.
character, Baphomet.
Baphomet is androgynous, right? So, or not androgynous, sorry, the opposite. He's hermaphroditic. So hermaphrodite, Hermes, Aphrodite.
Aphrodite. Yeah.
Right. So to join together the male and the female. So this idea of transgenderism has mystic traditions that go way, way, way deep and way, way, way back. So that is definitely a component of it too. But I often say too, man, when you look at progressives, they look to me like the Joker from Batman's henchmen, right? They're always like running around. Purple hair, weird outfits, like weird makeup, like ugly, make themselves purposefully like ugly clowns almost. You know what I mean? The ones you see screaming about Trump all the time, it almost looks like they work for the Joker.
Yeah.
And like they're agents of chaos. Of chaos. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And they never look healthy.
No way. You get anyway. So all this stuff, man, it all ties back. And so I'm at a place now where I'm able to kind of step back, especially because I get to spend a lot of time in nature. What I love about nature, by the way, is none of these ideas work there. These progressive ideas, they don't work in nature. You go into nature, you're like, I mean, it's just, you can't be fooled anymore. So what I mean by that is like, I go out and I take life to sustain my life. That's part of my practice, right? So I kill animals and plants, and then I turn them into my body. But I don't kill them because I don't like them. I actually love them, and I'm in deep reciprocal relationships with these different organisms in the same way that lions and gazelles are like inextricable. They're woven together. They don't hate each other. They need each other. It's like that thing we talked about. If you took it away, it would create problems. Like if you took the lion away from the gazelle would become physically messed up because they need the lion to help them stay healthy, right? You don't want to take your problems away. You want to work with them, right? So when the transgender thing started to become like with full respect to people who are struggling with all these dysmorphias and all of that, like that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this idea of trying to convince people to do these surgeries to themselves or take these drugs, right? That's like a really toxic ideology. Well, as somebody who spends time in nature, there was like no way you could foist that on me. I just know it's bullshit because I know what the real world is like. But somebody who's been dissociated from the natural world and only living in the realm of human ideas is easily fooled by something like that. That's the problem with nature divorcement, is it cuts you off from your sense of what's real and like what makes sense. Because things in nature, it's like when, right now in the US, we have the idea of meritocracy coming back. Like it should be based on merit. And people are like, that's not fair. It's like, dude, nature's not fair. Yeah. It's just not fair. It's not. It's like one squirrel's faster than another squirrel and that one lives and the other one doesn't. And it's just not fair. Owls swoop down and kill your kids. It sucks. It's just not fair. But like, hey, that's squirrel life. Like, and it turns out the more fair we try to make it, the more problems we actually create, right? So nature kind of is an antidote to this metaverse philosophy, I think, and kind of inoculates you against it. But anyway, back to what I was saying before, Luciferianism is this idea basically of we're going to progress our way out of all of this stuff and we're going to create our own world. We're going to seize the reins from the creator and we're going to create our own world. And in that world, it'll run the way we want it to run. And what I like to try to say to people is this, like, okay, as we keep talking about humans evolving to the next level, but all I see is people devolving to something worse. I'm like, where are these evolved? The height of human evolution is Christ. Like Christ represents the evolution of humans. He says that will be like him. That's the evolution of humans, not this metaverse, transgenderism, androgyny. That's obviously not, because you look at it and you're like, those people look sick, unhealthy, they're poisoning themselves, they're destroying themselves, they're cutting themselves, they're burning themselves. That's not it. That's not where evolution lies. It lies in us becoming more loving and learning to treat others the way we want to be treated, not in exploiting others. This is insane.
And could you also zoom in on that? So do you believe that we do that like during this lifetime, like just becoming like Christ, or that we like reach some form of like heaven on earth, or
yeah, well,
how could
I
we
don't
zoom
think
in
we
on
reach
that?
a heaven on earth without there first being a major crisis, like something we've never, like that's never happened before. So I know there's been some major crises in the world, but I think that we have a more major crisis somewhere in the future before any of this. I say that because that's.
But could I bring another perspective on this?
Yeah, please.
Because like I see you from afar, of course, like living like really close to nature, and I can also like see on my own life when I started like living close to nature. I feel that my life is so much more like a
Yeah.
heaven
Yeah.
than before, when I was having like the eczema and all the aches and the pains in my body. I didn't know where they came from. I was like completely like detached from like my natural environment, like wearing shoes that gave me back pain. Didn't know anything about like you should go around like bare feet. Like there's so many things that is from the natural world, and when I started to incorporate that into my life, I just like felt, I feel like really happy. I feel like I have a ton of energy. I feel that I'm super happy. And of course, I deal with problems, I deal with issues, but I think that I deal with that like so much better than somebody that is disconnected from what God has created for us. And maybe you would like agree that you are also, or could you say that you are dealing with life much better than somebody that is like completely stuck in the matrix? Like who is suffering more here? You, or like the one on Ozempic, never touching the ground, never eating anything like natural, just going to McDonald's? Like who is like really living in hell, and who is living in heaven? That is just like one simple perspective.
There's some, that's
I bet there's like more dimensions on this, but I'm so grateful. I'm really happy.
It's huge what you just said. This is a really big piece. It's important. Okay, on an individual level, like let's say I'm able to share that kind of package of information with you that, I used to call rewilding, like, and I can share that package with you, and then you can sort of upload that software into yourself. Your life's just going to get better, right? Like you just, in all the ways you just described. But you're not living in heaven on earth. I mean, the goodness hopefully outweighs the badness, but if you just focus solely on all the things in your life that aren't good, you could probably generate a pretty good list of painful things too, right? But before all that information, the painful stuff was like more and the joyful stuff was less. So, okay, on an individual level, we have the ability to be living in much more bliss and much more joy and much more health, despite all the stuff going on in the world, right? Like despite all of this like toxic chemistry around us and the blotting out of the stars and all this stuff we've been talking about. Like I live a pretty happy life, generally speaking. But I don't believe this is the dimension where we reach a kind of heaven on earth. I don't think that's how it's going to work here. I think there are certain rules about this place and how it works that's a mix of the two. It's dark and light, it's challenging, and it's joyful. It's kind of like it's both. I think that right now what's happening, there was a movie, I think it's called Waking Life, came out many years ago, and there was this really powerful scene. The whole movie is done as you can tell they filmed live action characters, but then they painted over everything. So everybody's like painted animated, but you can tell it's like real actors and stuff. And there's this great scene at the end where it's saying something like, every moment of your life is a decision where God's hand has reached out to you, and every moment is about you either saying, yes, I'm going to take it, or no, I'm going to turn my back to it. And that's what life actually is. And I kind of think it's something like that. It's like the more we take his hand, or the more we open our heart to God, the more our life is filled with joy and bliss and happiness. And we find that we get it through the opposite of what we think, because we've been taught to think the way you get it is you go get yours. And the reality is you're happier when you give a gift than when you get one. Yeah. That's so counterintuitive. At Christmas time every year, man, I was such a humbug for so long. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't care what anyone gives me. I just want to like do things for people. It brings me so much joy. I find so much more joy when I do hold the door open for somebody than when I skitter past them and go through it real quick. It's like I get more joy out of letting someone go than cutting them off and try. It's interesting. When I serve myself, I suffer more. When I serve others, I suffer less. And it's confusing because when I serve others more, I have less time for myself. So it's like very confusing and counterintuitive. So I think partially in this life, we're meant to explore that and learn how through Jesus does this amazing thing, man, where it's just before his death, the night before, I think, and he grabs a wash basin and he starts washing the feet of his disciples. And this is like unheard of, right? It's like, can you imagine like you go to see your guru and he starts wiping your butt? You're like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I should be doing this for you, you know? And he's showing that the greatest is the one who's willing to be the least. You know, so like one thing I try to do, and again, I'm terrible at this stuff. This is hardly like me being like, I'm really good at this. But when I'm on the road making my TV show, you know, we're in people's homes, we're in people's businesses, we're in people's kitchens. Like I'll often do dishes because I don't like doing dishes and I know nobody else likes doing dishes. And for me, it's so good for my soul because it's like, it's really easy because I'm the talent on the show. If I want, everyone will just treat me like I'm the man. And they'll give me the best room in the house and the best bed, and they'll just do everything for me. And when you look at the characters who come out of Hollywood, you see how toxic that is for them, that they go insane from that treatment. It's not good for you. It is not good to be treated like you're better than everybody. That is not good. So you got to find ways. So like I'll do dishes because it's like, I mean, it's easy and glib to say like it humbles me, but it literally brings me back down to reality. Like, yeah, maybe in this instance, I get to be the guy on camera. And so people think something special is going on with you, but it's like, it's not. It's just not, right? It's like, it's important. We're all on the same level. Jesus like washes people's feet. It's unbelievable, right? So I think when we do that kind of thing in this life, we can create we could turn this world into a permaculture paradise. Yeah. I think to answer your question, if we all got on board and we did the Garden of Eden thing, which is the whole world is a giant, beautiful permaculture and we're the gardeners of it, and we just take care of this beautiful world and we live in harmony, there's still going to be like headaches and stomach aches and pain and stub toes and dying and death. So I think that there's another level that I think maybe we could go to after, but I don't think it happens here in this life. But I think in this life, we could make things way, way better for ourselves individually, for our families, for our communities. That said, when I look at the world, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I just don't. I mean, it looks like they're going to try to go to Mars and they're going to try to cover the world in internet and they're going to continue all of these insane programs. Like, I hate to break it to people, but Trump's not going to save the world from all of this stuff. I mean, just none of these crazy hair politicians from all of these countries right now are going to save us. Like no human is coming to save you. It's just not how it works. And so I don't think that's what ends up happening. I think that we reach a crazy crisis point, but that doesn't mean that at the individual or family level, we can't be living beautiful, joyful, fulfilled lives. But I think it's going to get tough. And the thing is you and I, it's been pretty easy. Yeah. For most of our life. Like we forget in the way that we said before, kids today can't even imagine a world without social media. It's like you and I don't think much about two. It wasn't that long ago. That was like real recently, right? Yeah. And the world was in a really dark place and things were very hard. Yeah. And I think we're going to see hard times again because things have gotten way too easy. And, I just think that's a reality. But I think even when it's like during COVID quarantine, let's say, and things really sucked, I had a great time. At an individual level, I really actually I got the most out of it that I could. So I think even in tribulation, there's the opportunity for a life filled with joy and love. And actually, that's the hardest thing to do. And it's the rightest thing to do.
Yeah, totally agree. I'm so happy we went here because thinking about interviewing you was like, I was like, this is so hard because there are so many topics. And why my show is called Lifestyle Design is because like when I'm setting goals and looking at 10 different categories of life. It's spiritual life, emotional health, family, parenting, career, finance, relationships. Like there's so many parts. And I was like, where is this podcast going with Daniel Vitalis? Because I know that you are so interested in so many topics. And I really really hope that you start podcasting again and just like go nuts into all of these like different directions, because I'm gonna be like your truest fan.
I'm gonna be watching for downloads. Then you better follow through.
Like if you will have like a paywall, I will even like pay for just so you know. So I hope you really go there. So I want to ask you, like, from this, are you optimistic for about the future?
Yeah, because I'm that type of person. Like, I don't know that that's really based on circumstance.
No.
Based on the people that I've known, like the people, like my wife is such an incredible optimist. It's very powerful to be around for me. She's that way if things are going bad, and she's that way if things are going good. So it's not the external circumstances, the internal circumstances. You know, that's interesting to
Agree.
think about.
Mm.
So when I look at the external circumstances, it's like, I'm not trying to, like, some people might listen to this and be like, dude, that guy is a doomer. Oh my goodness, right? I'm sorry, but when I look, it's like if you had asked me 2 months before World War II, like, how's things going? I'd probably been like, it's not looking good. It's
Yeah.
not looking real good. And that's how I feel about the state of the world from a socio-political perspective. It's like,
Mm.
not good. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I think it's going in a real bad direction.
Mm.
Internally, I'm so optimistic. Man, it's like, I don't know if have you messed with entheogens much or had the psychedelic experience in your life?
I've been reading like so much about it, reading books about it. Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind. I really enjoyed that one. And also like his Netflix series. I can really like recommend that one.
Mm.
And been trying to find like someone that I feel safe with
Mm.
going into these experience. Listening a lot to on Timothy Ferris talking about them, but he has also like been warning that like if you're going to do this, it should be in appropriate setting and it shouldn't be just like drugs off the streets or mushrooms from my backyard. Like so I've been a little bit hesitant because I've never done drugs in my whole life,
Yeah.
and then I've been producing children, or my wife been producing children for the last 8 years. So I need to find that like gap of time to dive deep into
Yeah.
it. But please tell me about like what your experience has
I
been.
mean,
And
I don't want to go too far down that road, but
yeah,
and I do agree that these are such powerful tools. It's kind of like if you were talking about nuclear weapons, it's like,
mm,
hey, you need to be careful with those. Like those are serious tools, you know? These are serious, serious tools. Dimethyltryptamine, DMT. I used to spend time in the desert of Arizona where the Bufo alivarius toad produces this 5-MeO-DMT, and we would catch these toads, and
mm,
you'd just sort of squeeze these glands on their back, and the stuff would squirt out, and you'd get it on a plate, and you'd let it dry, and then you put that in a pipe and smoke it. And within seconds of that inhalation, the person you are that you've always been, the guy on your license, your ego, me, Daniel Vitalis, that's gone. And you have an experience of sort of like rocketing out of your body, and then you're still conscious, but you're not a human anymore. Your consciousness is like merged with, I don't know what you call it, the universe, God, some massive all-encompassing experience that ends really quickly too, because it only lasts about a minute. So all of a sudden it starts reversing and you come back to your body. The first time I experienced that, I remember because the initial experience is you think you're dying. As this starts coming on, it comes very fast, but your initial experience is like, no, it's the obliteration of my ego. You associate that with death. Then you start coming back and you're like, oh no, damn it, that guy again. I got to be that guy again. That's how I felt the first time. I was like, oh
okay,
man, Daniel, I'm like trapped in that limited consciousness with that limited body, with that all my problems and psychological issues. Like, it was so much better where I just was for that 12 seconds or whatever it was, you know? There's this sense that the reality that we're living in, I'm going to have to use this like very old man analog analogy, but like a radio station where it's just,
yeah,
there's all these bands of frequency, and you're like, no, this is the song. And you're like, no, watch. And you just turn it a little bit and you're like, totally different song. You get this experience like, oh yeah, this earth and this body is just this like one very, very small part, very, very thin frequency. And there's doesn't take much, and none of this is real anymore. I don't know how to, it's very hard to put this stuff into words, but it's like trying to describe a third dimension to a two-dimensional being. That's
yeah,
kind of
got it.
what it's like. But what you see and experience and is pretty universal is that this dimension we're living in, with all these problems we've just been talking about and all this spiritual war and all that stuff, you're like, oh, this is just this like one frequency. Like, this isn't the whole story. This is like you walk into a library full of books and there's like one book that's kind of got a dark story in it. You're like, oh, no big deal, you know? But if you only know that story and you're living in that book, it's hard. But you're like, oh, there's all these other ones too. And like some are adventures and some are love stories and some are really fun, you know, and some are kids' books. Like there's a lot more going on. Consciousness, you got to have the experience, you know. There's no way you can convince me that nothing exploded and became everything and then consciousness just came out of that. Really, out of a big bang, consciousness emerges. Like what consciousness actually is the greatest gift. The free will you have with your consciousness is the greatest gift. It's easy to say that. It's very hard to receive it all the way into yourself. But the consciousness that you have, remember before I said there's something about humans that's so special that these beings, you know, let's say all this UAP stuff is real. I don't know if it is or it isn't, if there's aliens or not, but like, what are all these beings so interested in us for? What are these? Yeah. What is all this? It's like, why us, you know? Yeah. Something about our consciousness and free will is a much greater gift than we could ever understand. And I think when you zoom out of that whole biblical account and you start to go like, what is this really about? Like, what is the meaning of all this? It has to do with your free will and your consciousness and like what you do with that and where you place it. And I feel eternally optimistic about that, even if I think that the next chapter of the book is going to be a little rough. You know what I mean? That doesn't, I know there's I believe there's a real happy ending for those of us who choose to be part of it.
Yeah. So like my mind goes to like so many places, so it can barely like keep up. But like there was this survey in the States. So this survey was about, do you believe in aliens? And like maybe we go back like 50 years ago, maybe about like 17%, or it was like 7 or 17%, I can't remember, said, okay, yeah, I believe in aliens. And then the survey was made again like 10 years ago, and it was like over 70% that believed in aliens. And the more people believing in aliens, then we can simulate an alien attack and then make everybody just get shipped or get to do whatever we want them to do, because now like the whole planet need to act accordingly, or you will be zipped by maybe Starlink or something that we are calling like this is like an alien attack. So what do you think about this theory?
So I believe that has been called Project Bluebeam for a long time.
Yeah, where they have like these, what do you call it, like holograms, like really real holograms up in the sky.
Or now, I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of those. Just the Chinese in particular seems really good at these sophisticated multi-drone fleets in the air that can create incredible. Have you seen that? Like it's like a giant dragon in the air.
They had that in a Spider-Man movie, where this villain uses like that technology.
I encourage you to look online at these drone swarms that are doing art in the sky. Man, I'm telling you, you can't believe it's at this level yet, but of course, all it takes is just some programming, and then all these drones fly in such a way with their lights that it creates the impression of anything you want in the sky. The hologram technology and the HARP technology and what they can do with the ionosphere and all this kind of stuff is like, okay, so in the conspiracy world, there's been this idea for a long time, I don't know, decades, of something called Project Bluebeam, where there would be a false flag event where the people would be told there was an alien invasion happening, and that would be used to catalyze a kind of a one world government, because the idea of an external threat would unite humanity. And this is tough stuff, because when you hear unite humanity, that sounds really good. It's like, yeah, we should unite humanity. Or like get rid of the nation states they talk about to create a one world. And you're like, yeah, that all sounds really good, till you're like, oh, wait, you want it to be like a one world with like oligarchs who control everybody and can program their money or take away their money, or like Wall-E can shut you off from your access to the world. Like, it sounds utopian, and then you realize, no, it's a dystopian idea. We've talked several times, predictive programming's come up. So I think you were kind of alluding to this. That's what I think you meant. Yeah. That, go back to the early 90s before everybody had TVs. Once you have generations of Star Trek and Star Wars and endless movies about alien invasions and endless movies about good aliens and ET, and you just get inundated with this idea. And then when you have I gotta say, something that's made me pretty, if I'm really honest, it makes me angry, is the
Okay.
irresponsible way that the United States government, the Pentagon's been handling this stuff. I just have been blown away. We've had so many times in the last couple of years where there'll be some story like, oh, yes, this is a real UAP. We can't explain it. And they'll allude to the idea that it's off world. And then they just leave that hanging out in the public and they never explain it. During COVID, it started when, if you remember, there was several pieces of footage like the Tic Tac video and several other videos that came out that were from government installations or from government equipment like jets and things like that. And they were like, these are real. And they leave you with the like, these are real, like real what? And they kind of leave you with this idea that there's aliens and they never explain. And I think it's so irresponsible. And it leaves me wondering, what are they saying? Are they saying there are aliens, or why are they trying to scare people with this stuff? And that makes me think that maybe it's
Isn't that the
possible.
purpose?
Well, that makes me think maybe that is the purpose, to set us up for that kind of a thing. But if you go deep down the ufology rabbit hole, a lot of those people believe these entities do exist and that at some point soon it has to be disclosed. And therefore, you could also argue that they're doing it because they're building up tolerance so that eventually they can disclose, hey, there's another species or multiple other species or a galactic federation of species, or like maybe that's real or maybe none of that's real and this whole thing is a giant deception. It seems so preposterous the first time you encounter that kind of an idea, but the more time you spend with it and the more time you watch what actually happens out there and the more you find out about all the false flag events and things that have supposedly happened that never even happened, major world events that you thought went one way and actually we were lied to and they did, it starts to become more plausible. I have a hard time believing that this, what I called irresponsibility from the Pentagon and the government, US government, about this is actually that. I almost think it's got to be something more complex because they can't be stupid enough to just be like, yeah, there might be aliens. See you guys later. Like, that's just like, that seems so irresponsible. So why are they doing that? What is that really about? And is it predictive programming? I'll certainly have my eyes out for it. Now, here's the interesting thing. And again, we'll go back to the Bible. In Revelation, when Christ returns with his angels, the world turns their weapons against him, like as if the world thinks they're an invading force from space, right? So that's another interesting angle on it.
Yeah, yeah,
According
yeah,
to the
yeah, yeah,
scripture,
yeah.
at some point, the world's convinced that there's an invasion happening. So I don't know, man. All I know is the government keeps sending us videos that they're like, oh, by the way, this isn't us. We don't know what this thing is, and it defies of all of our technologies or whatever. I also do think, though, that I believe in that thing of a breakaway civilization, that that there's a new physics that's been discovered that is not made its way into the public sphere. This idea that we haven't come up with better technology for power than what we have right now. I mean, I don't know if you saw
You see
Stephen
that
Greer's
in
documentary.
movies all the time. When I see something in the movies, I'm like, this must be around somewhere,
Yeah.
somehow. Like, for example, the movie Black Panther, the Marvel movie, where they have like this hidden place in Africa where they go in with their flying, like, wouldn't call it planes. Have you seen Black Panther? But they have like a precious metal which give them like endless of energy, and they have
Yeah.
like, they are just like abundant in like everything,
Yeah.
but they need to keep this hidden
Right.
from the US and the rest of the world, because they will be like, so the greed will take over and they will want to come and occupy this or try to occupy this country.
Yeah. Yep. So this is another one of these really interesting things because you've got, like, Stephen Greer made that great documentary. I forget the name of it now, but it's about how the U.S. Patent Office is watched by a, I don't know what you call them, like some kind of government bureaucracy that watches for patents on free energy or perpetual motion technologies. And as soon as those are filed, they come in and swoop those up. And sometimes those people die who filed the
Yeah.
patent. And Greer's worked with a lot of these people. Some have created engines that run on water. Some have created engines that need some fuel to get them started. But once they start, they produce surpluses of energy over what they're using to, essentially free energy. They're tapping into 0 point or whatever that energy source is.
Have you seen the Thrive documentaries? Thrive.com. They
I
were
don't think
also
so.
talking about like endless energy, and in
Mm-hmm.
Thrive 2 they came up with another documentary. So the people they were had interviewed for the first documentary had died when they were trying to do the second documentary.
Wow. Yeah. So that I think is
So I've
real.
seen actual footage of like these like
Machines.
machines, just
Yeah.
like as big as like a little box could just generate energy for a small town.
Yeah. Right. So
And
you could potentially
without
have
breaking.
something this big that runs for the rest of your life, all your energy needs come out of it, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
we're literally, this is all actually what we think of as matter isn't, it's energy, right? So yeah, I think that there's maybe a breakaway civilization that's been working on this stuff for 100 years, maybe, or maybe since the 1980s, somewhere in there. And they've been developing technology in a vacuum that the public hasn't seen. And it looks like that might be a government and private sector collaboration. So companies like Lockheed Martin, for instance, who have been developing flying technology that doesn't work on the kind of propulsion that our regular jets do. You know, something that was really fascinating to me about Jeffrey Epstein, if you remember
Yeah,
the
yeah.
details of that story, that he had this honeypot or honey trap thing that he was doing, right? So it's like bring people in, film them having sex with someone underage, and then have blackmail on them forever, right? He was obsessed with physicists. Do you
All
remember that
right.
part of the story?
No, never
Okay, so
remember
you
that.
hear
I
a
thought it
little
was
bit
just like
about
the Hollywood elite that was
no,
doing
see,
it.
that's what's interesting. So you hear about Bill
Mm.
Clinton and you hear about Prince, which one was it? Prince
Prince William,
Andrew,
Andrew.
and some of these other highly placed individuals, Bill Gates, another one. But
Yeah.
if you dig in, he was always with these physicists, high level physicists. It's like, why? You know who even went to, he was connected to the guy in the wheelchair, Stephen Hawkins.
Stephen Hawkins. Yeah.
Okay, why would somebody like Epstein, who potentially was CIA and Mossad, why would he want to have blackmail on physicists? Like, what black book projects would you want physicists working on where they would have blackmail over them that would prevent them from ever speaking about what they were working on? Right? It's like, this is the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got a physicist, now I'm not talking Bill Clinton, I'm talking some regular guy who's a physicist, PhD, nerd. He's a nerd. And then you get him sleeping with some 16-year-old who looks 18. And then you come to him and you're like, hey, you have a wife and kids and a career and a tenure, and we want you to work on this program. And if you don't, or you ever talk about it, we're going to destroy you by showing everybody what you did. And now you got people working at Los Alamos or Area 51 or whatever on programs that can never talk about it. I think that kind of thing might have been going on for some time. And I guess to tie a bow on all of this, I'm not sure that anything we've been talking about today is unrelated. Like, I don't think that this idea of Jesus Christ and angels and devils and demons and this idea of UAPs and aliens and this idea of breakaway civilization, I don't think these are all like in a vacuum from each other. Somehow they're all unified by one thing that's very difficult for us to perceive, because we know about as much about what's going on the farm as a cow does. You know, we're lucky, you and me, because most of our lives we've lived free range on the farm. During COVID, we got to experience what it's like to be on a factory farm where you actually lose your freedom a little bit. But then we went back to being mostly free range. But you could live in a place where you're more factory farmed. And this place looks like, you know, unfortunately, it looks like the West is trending towards authoritarianism too. How much does a free range or CAFO factory farmed cow know about his future? How much does he know about the farm and the farm's operation and how the economics work and where beef is sold and who consumes it? Nothing. So you and me are like, we're here like speculating about all this stuff.
Yeah.
We're literally like cows on the farm. Like, we just don't have access to the information. So for the cow, it's like, well, I know there's that slaughterhouse over there. I can smell it. And I see these trucks come in all the time. And that guy keeps showing up every time. I know it's all related somehow, but I don't know what they're really doing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Something like that maybe is what, you know, where what we have
But
what we're privy to.
I really love this metaphor, because I'm also like really hesitant to say this is the truth, this is how it is, because
Mm.
I have had so many beliefs proven wrong, and I have changed my beliefs like a couple of times during my lifespan. So anybody just like
Well done.
saying like this is the new ism, I just like get this like allergic
Mhm.
reaction. But I can sit here and listen to you, bring it in, try to like put it in my like matrix of thoughts, but But it's also like what you're saying. The more you go into all of these different rabbit holes, like first it was just Epstein, but then you go into like Luciferianism and then Hollywood, and then you're starting to see like the bigger picture. You're starting to see like, okay, this was just like a piece of puzzle before, but now it's starting to paint a bigger picture.
But we don't know what the picture is
We
on the
don't know
puzzle.
what the picture is.
So we're speculating what the picture is going to be. We don't know, but the pieces are real. I can hold the piece in my hand. I know it's real. I know there was this guy Epstein. I know that stuff was happening. I know there's these UAP videos. Hey, I don't know. That could be a government project. That could be something else. But I know that exists. I saw COVID happen. I know that was real. I don't know how these puzzle pieces all fit together. But one thing I'm sure of is they do.
Yeah.
You know, they clearly all are interlocking. I just don't know how they go together. And when they're finally together, I don't know what the big picture actually is. And I don't know that we'll ever know in this lifetime. But I do believe there will be a time where we'll be able to look at it all and we'll understand. One of the really cool things that happens in Revelation when this like character we call the devil or Satan, the great dragon, is thrown down, is that the world looks at him and they go, this is the one that deceived all the nations? Like with derision, like that's who deceived us this whole time? Like it's kind of like when they see the great Oz and then they see the guy behind the curtain who's actually
Yeah.
Oz, and it's like, oh wait, this is the guy? Like he seemed so powerful. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be something like that where we're like, he was actually like kind of weak and pathetic. Like we actually had more power and we didn't, because that's the story. You know, the Wizard of Oz is like such a cool story, man. It's like in the end, she realizes everything she wanted, she already had. She had to go on that big journey to realize she already had all that power. And she goes to what she thinks is the seat of power and eventually realizes she has more power than he does. She's more courageous than he is. He's actually a coward, you know? It's a very interesting story.
Like I can have like that story as an overlay for our life right now. Like we have so much potential within us, but we are always like looking outside of ourselves to see it, and we are also like controlled by fear mostly. When like I know you and me, you might not remember this. Like this was like many years ago. We chatted a little about David Icke,
Oh,
and
interesting.
yeah. And you know a lot about his work. I don't like subscribe to everything he's saying, but one thing that I totally subscribe to is that they are just a few, and they are controlling us with fear. Is a little bit like that Wizard of Oz story going on there.
Yeah.
Because like when that fear disappears, and I can feel that I'm not afraid of like from one elite government or this shadow government or whatever you want to call them, and that doesn't like bring me down as much as it used to when I was like, okay, these guys will control my life, and we will have like an alien invasion, and what we will do, and I need to prep and whatever.
Yeah.
I'm grabbing my hunting license. I'm filling up like my weapon locker with ammunition, and just like thankfully I'm just like super relaxed right now. I'm focusing on my kids. It's been a blessing. The podcast I'm focusing on that also is going good, and trying to focus on what can I contribute to the world right
Yeah.
now, because I
Yeah.
feel that I'm in that spot. I just turned 40 years old, got a lot of experience, and happy to say that I don't know. I can't say that I like deeply know anything. I'm like more open to just like saying that I might be wrong about everything. Because when I can see, because I grew up with two so different parents. One was Egyptian and one was Swedish. My mother was a hustler and entrepreneur, and my dad was like a square police officer, just like telling the truth, always like being with the truth. And my mom, she didn't know what the truth was. She was always like no, reality, you can bend it as much as you want. Like
Yeah.
these rules are just like suggestions. We can bend them as much as we want. Like so, like, and can see like her beliefs not matching my dad's belief, and just saying, okay, they just don't see each other like the same. And that's what I'm seeing with the Democrats and the Republicans, the Trumpers, and the one thinking that he's the new Hitler.
Your
Like
left brain and your right brain, though,
it's
man. It's
like your
like
left brain and your right
it's
brain, they don't
it's
communicate.
inside us and it's
Yeah.
outside of us, you know?
So we're
Yeah.
going like through this like crazy period, but I also believe that we've been like going through like different stages of these types
hmm
of periods where we believe. like historically, that the world will soon end. But on that, like we've been speaking about like spirituality, going into some conspiracy theories, and you have like that layer of connecting deeply with nature. So for you personally, what's your filter on designing your life, and how do you design your life? Do you have a system? Do you have a method? Do you have a practice? Because I want to hear your answer, because I feel that you have like this rootedness in something that is not like it's more like a system science approach. You are connecting many dots,
Yeah.
and what I can see from afar is that you are also like looking at your own health from so many different angles, but I think you're also like really conscious with how you are living your life.
Yeah, well, we've traversed a lot of interesting psychological territory today, but like at the end of the day, it's that chop wood, carry water thing. So it's like,
Exactly.
I
I
mean,
want to bring it to chop wood and carry water.
yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like I gotta go feed the fire, and I gotta just do all those same things that every gorilla and raccoon and squirrel has to do. I mean, it's just like you have to take care of all your needs. You asked about a system, and I've used a system for a really long time. And what's interesting is I learned this from entheogens. I have to be honest, like
From who?
what I'm about to share with you, I
Yeah, yeah.
learned doing entheogens. We were talking before about psychedelic medicines.
Okay, entheogens, psychedelic
Hmm.
medicine. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I learned this really interesting thing through that. It just sort of became obvious to me through that process that, we were just talking about the Wizard of Oz. So if you look at the archetypes, there's these four characters that are trying to go to Oz, right? It's Dorothy, it's the Tin Man, it's the Scarecrow, and it's the Lion. And they represent the four elements. So Dorothy is earth. She's looking for home. The Tin Man is water, because he's looking for heart, which is emotion. And water's always been associated with emotion, just like earth is always associated with home. The Scarecrow is air. He's looking for mind, a brain. That's the intellect. It's always been associated with air. And the Cowardly Lion is looking for courage. That's fire, right? It's interesting. It's this earth, air, water, air, fire thing. The way that I think about living life, I think about the four elements a lot, because what I've come to understand is that what we call matter are sort of like stages of density or densities of energy. So we live on a planet that's made of solid stuff, that's Earth. And then floating on top of that is this other state of matter. Let me actually back up. If we take something solid like water, it's ice, but we add energy and add energy and add energy, eventually that energy causes that ice to go from a solid to a liquid. If we add energy to that liquid will eventually refine to another phase we call a gas, that's steam. And if you continue to add energy, it'll actually ionize and become plasma. That's what lightning's made of. That's what the sun is made of. That's what, we see arcing across the sky as the northern lights, plasma. It's the fourth. So there's four stages, four phases of matter, or you could think of them as four densities of energy. It depends on how you want to look at it from above or below. Okay, so we live on planet Earth, it's solid, and then floating on top of it is the hydrosphere. So think of the geosphere as the Earth. Floating on top is the hydrosphere. Floating on top of that is an even less dense layer of matter called the atmosphere. And then all of that is actually housed inside a layer of the sun called the heliosphere. We actually live inside the heliosphere, which is like almost like the light atmosphere of the sun. That's all plasma, fire. So it's literally like earth, water, air, fire. Like that's the world we live in. It's very interesting. And our bodies are designed to eat all four elements and to eliminate all four elements. So this is really neat to me. So every day I have to eat solid stuff, food, earth, and I put earth in, and then earth has to come back out the other side. Every day I have to put water in. So I got to eat from the geosphere. Then I got to drink from the hydrosphere. So water's got to go in, and then that water comes back out the other end. All day long, I have to breathe in atmosphere and exhale back out atmosphere. And in order to make vitamin D and just to have a generally good mood, I need that photosphere of the sun to penetrate my skin, but I'll just overheat. So I have to expel light as well as infrared light as heat through sweat. So we're like these beings that live in this four elements, and all day we consume and eliminate the four elements. And so when I construct and I think about my health, plan. It's like that's how I try to zoom out from this, like, well, you need this many macro, have this much protein, and this. It's like all those little details you were talking about, that reductionism earlier today. Zoom out of that, and you're like, oh, this 4-element thing is real. Like this ancient idea, this way of looking at the world is real. And similarly, we can use that same metaphor of the 4 elements to think about how we regulate our social life too, because it's like the earth is like the physical. So that's like my physical body. I know my physical body needs strength training. I know it needs cardiovascular training. I need to do low and slow zone 2. I need to do fast, explosive anaerobic work. I need to do all those things to care for my physical body, right? I need to feed it the right foods, all of that. Then the next layer would be water, right? So that's the emotional realm. I need to have a healthy emotional life. So that means I need to be thinking about community, connections, relationship, love, and I need to make sure that's in balance and that's healthy. The next layer up is air, and that's always been associated with thought and the mind. So I need to feed and care for my intellectual life as well. Right. So I need to be thinking like I need to be feeding myself information. I need to be organizing the information in my mind. I need to make sure that my mind stays sharp and is fed. And then ultimately there's that fire element I think of as that's the spiritual realm. And I need to make sure that that part of my life is regulated and nourished too. So if I have any one of those elements is out of balance, then I'm out of balance. So all 4 elements, I think it's important that we're in any given day. It's like, hey, am I feeding all of these different parts of myself? Now, I was traveling in Peru and I was talking to a shaman there. We were there to drink ayahuasca actually. And we got talking about this through a translator. And he was like, oh, you're leaving something out. There's the sexual component too. And so I thought that was really interesting. I was saying, yeah, there's like 4 bodies, a physical body, an emotional body, an intellectual body, and a spiritual body. He's like, well, there's also a sexual body. And I think that's true. And so that to me is like that. The sexual is the male female, the back and forth, the push and pull, the in and out. So that's how that is when I was talking before. It's like I need to absorb earth each day and I need to eliminate earth each day. I need to absorb water each day and eliminate that in and out, that push and pull. That's that sexual toggle, right? Because otherwise I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to be standing still. So it's like one thing is a pull, one thing is a push. It's like food. I want to eat it. And then it's like, oh God, something's happening. I need to expel it, right? It's that in and that out. And so I think about that too as this other component. It's like night and day, light and dark. There's this male female component. And in that body system I just gave you, that would be the sexual component. It's really important. That's such an important dynamic part of who we are, is that the way that we're different in the presence of men and women, and making sure that I'm nourishing both sides of that in the same way that I got to make sure that I balance like how much food goes in and how much food comes out. So I use this 4 element with a male female kind of component to regulate my life and build all the systems out in my life. And what you'll find is that that same system can be applied to almost anything you think about, because it's almost like for something to be embodied in the 3rd dimension, it has to have earth, air, fire, water components to it, and some kind of dynamic opposites. And so I found it everywhere I look, even in the Wizard of Oz. You know what's interesting? You know, that sexual component, that light and dark component, that's in the Wizard of Oz too. There's a good witch and a bad witch, right?
All right.
So you have like this idea of 2 dynamic opposites. And it's cool because the opposites actually are the parents of the elements. So male is air and fire, and female is earth and water. It's just, that's how all the ancestral cultures all through time understood this. You go back, you look, the Greeks understood that, native peoples understand. It's just like everywhere you look, that's how the world is broken up. And I think that approach, when you first talk about it, sounds so unscientific to people. And it's like, it's actually very scientific. We stopped using the words earth, air, fire, water, and instead we say solids, liquid, gases, and plasma. So we sound more scientific, but it's the same thing. This idea has been around forever. And I think it's how the world's built on it. And you can use it to really structure your life around.
But have you studied Chinese medicine?
A little bit. And I know that they've got a wood element and stuff.
Yeah, but so like when you were speaking about this, so this brought me back to when I was studying like macrobiotic like cooking. Mm-hmm. So they're using like these 4 elements when they are like diagnosing or thinking about health and the body, the mind, and the soul, and like everything you're talking about. But they also have like the yin and yang component. Mm-hmm. So that is like the 4 elements, and then you have like the female and male energy, like, and trying to like think and come from that perspective on your life when designing your life, how do you go forward with like this lens? How, like, do you set goals, or are you using it as like a diagnostic tool, as you can do with like macrobiotic lifestyle? They are using it as like a diagnostic tool. Like when I go to that Chinese doctor, she often says to me that, okay, you have too much heat, you have too much fire. So
Yeah.
reduce the amount of food that is fire, like coffee or hot chili, or you are stressing too much. That is too much fire. You need to reduce the fire, and we need to. So they are always like talking about like these elements.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
how do you use it
yeah.
in lifestyle design?
Well, I think more diagnostically because, man, I'm not that big into goal setting. I gotta say,
Really?
yeah, I'm really
I would
not.
guess the opposite.
No, I'm really not.
Okay,
I
cool.
I definitely move through life based on feel and serendipity, and I think most people really do. I
Yeah.
think this idea of setting goals and going and achieving them is like a very small percentage of the population. Like if you want to be an Olympian, you have to do it that way. You got to set goals, you got to hit those
Mm.
landmarks and blah blah blah. But we're in this culture now where everyday regular people love to try to look at those high achievers and be like, how do I copy what they're doing? And I got a goal set. But
Yeah,
in
yeah.
reality, it's like when somebody's like, "Well, I want to get married and I'm single," and they list out like what they were looking for in a wife, and it's like, dude, that's just not how it's gonna work. You're gonna meet somebody, some magic's gonna happen. She's not gonna
Yeah.
be anything like what you thought, and you're gonna find out that all the things you didn't know you needed are what you needed. So it's like
Mm.
you can set goals all you want, but life's very organic. And
So
so I
interesting.
sometimes think that the goal setting thing is a bit like the Luciferian thing
Okay.
versus the natural magic. Like, let's say there's natural magic and there's Luciferianism. Like, natural magic's like I'm going with the flow of nature and I'm tuned in and I'm feeling and seeing what's happening. And Luciferianism's like, let's get inside of a circle and a pentagram and cast spells and try to make certain things happen that we want. It's like
Mm.
I'm more in the natural magic side, but I definitely use it diagnostically. So, an example would be, wow, I've been so focused on nutrition and what I eat. Am I eating in the right things or not eating the wrong things? Or, I'm so focused on my physical training and I haven't read a book that's expanded my mind in 6 months. Like, oh, geez, that part's out of balance. Or like, here's a real common one, a guy who's like yourself or myself, who's really motivated, loves to learn, and doesn't realize that they're emotionally a child still.
Yeah.
And they get to be 30, 40 years old and they haven't ever, like I've heard this great saying recently, I don't know who to attribute it to, but it was basically that the role of a woman in a man's life is to teach him how to lead from the heart.
Yeah.
Most men won't figure that out on their
Mm.
Some will, just like some women are going to figure out how their car works, but like most of them probably aren't.
Yeah.
Like there's exceptions to all these kind of ideas, but like generally speaking, a lot of the shit I've taught my wife, she wasn't going to figure out, and vice
Mm.
versa, because there's whole aspects of myself that I never had access to except that my wife showed me how. So a lot of guys like have this incredible physical body and they have this incredible mind, but then when you're like try to tap into the emotional intelligence, it's not there.
Yeah.
Right. So I want to have good physical intelligence, right? So like, I don't know, PQ, and like maybe that's my ability to climb a rope or climb through a tube or swim across a lake or whatever. It's like I want all of that. But I also want to have an IQ and be able to problem solve. But I also want to have an EQ, which is like my ability to emotionally feel what's going on in the room around me, right? To read the room. And then I want to have, I don't know, an SQ, like I want to be spiritually developed as well.
Mm.
So I guess I'm often sort of scanning myself like, man, how long since I've had prayer in my life? Like maybe it's been a
Yeah.
little while, or meditation. It's like, oh, that one's easy to slip on. So I got to like crank up the fire element. Or, people, oh, I haven't trained in a while. I got to crank up the physical element. So, and the other thing I'll say about this, did you ever watch the Avatar that Nickelodeon made, that show?
No,
Yeah.
I haven't, but
Bro,
I got a
for the
friend that is
kids.
completely,
Yeah.
like, he completely loves it. I
I'm not
actually
talking the
revisit
movies. I'm talking the
no,
OG
no,
cartoon series.
the cartoons. Yeah.
Yeah, for the kids, dude. Watch it with the kids and you'll be like, oh, this is what Daniel's talking about here.
Okay.
Bro, they lay it out over the course of seasons. It's incredible. But what I love about it is when you think about this kind of paradigm I was just talking about of the elements, you can easily find these caricature archetypes. So let's say the bodybuilder. He's got all earth, all physical body, but like not emotionally developed, not intellectually developed. Have you ever seen, like, sometimes I'll be watching a podcast with some thick neck bro, but he's really
Yeah.
smart. And I'm like, I just look at him and I think like this guy's going to be a meathead.
Yeah.
And you're like, I associate a thick neck with like a guy who's not that smart. And it's not always true, but it's usually true. Most of the time it's true, right? So you could get the bodybuilder who doesn't have much, IQ development, EQ development, or spiritual development. Then you get like the person who's super emotionally developed. Like think about the guy who's really emotionally developed, but his body's kind of like effeminate, and maybe his intellectual life's not that developed, and maybe he's an atheist. And then you can picture the archetype of the person who's the science nerd, all brain, no physical body, no emotional connection, doesn't believe in any spiritual thing at all, is just like science and calculations. And then you got the guru who's like skinny, right? Maybe he's abstinent, so like no like emotionally sexual life going on, no physical development, but is spiritually like totally tiled in. It's like, that's all cool. I want to be all of those.
Yeah.
Like, how do I master all four elements in myself so that I'm balanced, so that I'm not like any one of those caricatures, but actually I have all of them in me? That means that I'm not going to be as built as the bodybuilder. I'm not going to be as smart as the Einstein. I'm not going to be as spiritually tuned in as the guru, and I'm not going to be emotionally intelligent as like the romantic. But I have this belief, I guess a big driving part of my lifestyle design, to answer your question, I'm into this idea of I would rather be number 2 at everything than number 1 at anything. So, from podcasting, it's like, I think when we first reconnected, you had mentioned some numbers that you had hit with your show. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, if you want to be number 1 podcast, you already know how much work that's going to take, right? If you want to be number 1 in any sport or anything like that, that is all of your life. You want to be number 1, it's everything. But it's a way easier to be in the top 10, right? You can be in the top 10 at a bunch of things, but if you're number 1 at anything, it's at the expense of most everything else. So when I think about like, what's the fastest dog? Let's say it's probably the greyhound.
Yeah.
And what's like the strongest dog? Maybe it's like the English Mastiff. I want to be the Belgian Malinois. They're pretty damn fast. They're pretty damn strong. They're pretty damn smart. And they're a great house dog. But they're not the best in any of those categories because they're the best at being all the categories. And I think that is how we need people to be specialists. So like, I'm glad there are people in the world willing to sacrifice to be the smartest or the fastest or the strongest or whatever, because that's how we, that's great for humanity. But I want to be number 2 or 3 or 4 at everything rather than number 1 at anything. Because I don't think, for me personally, it's worth the investment to be at the tip top and to fight constantly to stay at the top. That to me is like, I just don't have an ego strong enough to want to do that,
Yeah. But it feels like that is also like derived from a really strong ego to be, okay, I want to be number 1. And then when you like dig a little bit about like, okay, why do you want to be number 1? Yeah, so I can be successful. So why do you want to be successful? Yeah, so I can get respect. To say, okay, how does it feel when you get respect? Okay, I feel comfortable, or I feel loved, or I feel cherished, or I feel valued. So like it's always interesting to like dig a little bit about what your motivation is. So I'm not found about like just putting a vision out there or set a goal without going like really deep and thoroughly through, why do I want this?
Yeah.
What is the purpose behind me wanting, for example, a house in Malibu, which I don't want? My wife wants a house in Malibu, but that's not like totally not me. So we are a little bit different there. I want to live in the woods. She wants to live in a fancy house. She loves fancy things. She loves like the house. And she's like really great at like creating a home. And I couldn't like care less, but we are like really complementing each other there. I'm starting like to appreciate what she is doing, like for our family, for our kids, for like this, like having this area of like having a home. But that is not like my goals or my purposes. So but like I must like thank you again, because so much from like the rewilding days have formed how I have set goals. I didn't like write this down, but I was like, I really want to go into permaculture. I really want like some land. I really want to live on the countryside. I want to leave Stockholm. I was like just like running around super stressed, not like having like any like healthy direction, I think, was just like promiscuous, like dating girls left and right, wasn't feeling like any form of purpose. So just like having like that step out from that little bubble of Stockholm, which can be really intoxicating, and people like really believe like that is like the whole
The
world.
world.
Yeah, totally. And I was in that world as well. And just like going out to the countryside where people are just like, they're hunting, they're growing some crops, some potatoes. They have like their basement where they store like some food, some crop, and they were like so down to earth. And I was like, okay, like these people are like more real than all of these like entrepreneurial startup circles that I was a part of, like that were like dreaming about what is going on like today. So I really have to thank you for just like setting that direction, because I'm really happy where I'm at.
Yeah, right on.
And many of my goals have been just like based in that, okay, what is also like natural. So how is this like not like super synthetic or like artifactual?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you know about Matthias Desmet. He was like really a really great voice during COVID, because he was both like, he had a professor's degree in statistics and he also was a psychologist. So like Dr. Robert Malone and Dr. Peter McCullough, you know, these guys, they often referred to Matthias
Oh, okay.
Desmet talking about like this mass formation psychosis.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
remember.
Sure.
So he wrote a book, The Psychology of Totalitarianism. Really great book, really great read. And the thing I remember most from that book was, if you are not connected to nature, you will super easily be manipulated.
That's what I was trying to say before. Because I hunt, fish, and forage, it's hard to trick me because
Yeah,
I know what's reality. I'm
exactly.
participating in the true dance of life. So when you present an idea to me, like a man can be trapped in the wrong body and he's actually a woman, it's like, I know that's not true. I just know that's not true. I mean, I'm out in the real world. Like, that's not something I see out there. Like, oh, yeah, this squirrel's trapped in the wrong body. It's supposed to be an owl. It's like, that's just ridiculous, you know? That's ridiculous. It's like that doesn't make any sense. And so, yeah, I agree. When you're connected to nature, it's much more difficult to deceive you. And that's why, because we're in this other interesting time where people in the city think that the people in the country, it's very frustrating where I live in Maine, because we're like a lot of people from Massachusetts and New York own camps where they'll come for the weekends or for chunks of the summer from the city to the town where I live. And when they come here, they treat us like we're stupid.
Yeah.
It's very annoying. They treat us like we're stupid. And they don't understand that what we see in them is that they're just completely obsessed with things that don't matter.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
What I have found hunting and fishing is, because I'm often going to rural places with rural, like salt of the earth type characters. These people they might not intellectually have all of the ideas in their head that people in the city do, but they're grounded into a kind of reality that's like a simple wisdom. There's such a big difference between wisdom and knowledge, or even wisdom and intelligence. And so I think that connection to nature cultivates wisdom. And I don't know that you can cultivate wisdom by like just learning about shit or watching videos or running around in the city. It just doesn't work like that, you know?
No.
So yeah, I would agree with you on that.
So like we've been going for like 2 hours and 50 minutes. I feel like that I would love to make a series with you.
I didn't expect to get into what we got into today.
No,
It
no,
got
me
pretty
neither.
far out there for a while.
I was not even like dreaming about that we were going to touch these subjects. So I was like super happy that we got here, and I just like threw away like all of the like prep questions that I had, because I was like, let's just continue on this train.
Yeah.
So, but I just want to like acknowledge you for the work that you've done. I'm so super appreciative of what you're doing, and I hope you continue that. And I really love that you had that spiritual aspect to what you're doing, which makes me like understand your work a lot more. And please, for God's sakes, create a new podcast.
All right. I've got most of the components I need to do it, but you know, the biggest challenge, and I don't know if you have any advice about this, but biggest challenge I have is that where I live, nobody comes. So when you look at like some of the big shows, they're in places where like, you know, they're in New York, they're in LA, and people are constantly coming through and they can have in person. And
Yeah,
you know,
but
so
I've seen like Chris Willick's Modern Wisdom, his podcast. So now when he's big, he has a really huge like studio in Austin where he moved. But before that, he was doing a lot of like interviews like this.
Like this, yeah. Because I'm not
Yeah.
moving to Austin.
No, no,
That's
so
the end.
don't move to Austin. I'm
Yeah,
not
don't want
moving to
to.
Austin.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm also like traveling. So we are like trying this lifestyle where we're homeschooling our
Hmm.
kids. We're in Portugal. We're just like experimenting. And I'm like in this rural area in Sweden. And I've like built this little tiny podcast studio, which is like really neat when I'm there in the summer. So I'm just like doing the podcasts like this. And I know that not only me, I recommended your podcast to one of my friends. Shout out to Mariano Amarillo. But he's like really like square or methodical, or like he's very what's the word I'm looking for? Like I can be like all over the place,
Yeah,
but he's
yeah.
like
He's more structured in his approach.
structured. Thank you. He's like really structured. So he went to Rewild Yourself podcast, listen from episode 1 until the last episode. So
Really? Wow.
yeah. So
Wow.
people like, I know people want to hear your voice. I know
I
people
really,
want
man,
to
thank
hear
you.
your ideas.
Yeah, right now, I'm on cable, and it's funny because so few people have cable anymore. And so I'm making this TV show. I make 10 episodes a season. I've made 50 episodes of this show. The show is amazing. I love it. I'm so proud of it. But
Yeah.
very few people can see it because you can't stream it. You got to watch it on cable. And I'm constantly saying to my team, like, oh my God, I got a podcast again. I miss it so much. I have so much to say. So
You got
I'm
a
getting
podcast and also get that show out somewhere, because I was like trying to watch your show, because like when you jumped from Rewild Yourself to Wildfire, okay, I want to check
see the
this out,
show.
because now I'm going to see it, because
Yeah.
like English is not my first language, and hearing about all these edible plants, and I was maybe like out doing like whatever I was doing, I wasn't like sitting down and translating the words that I didn't understand, and all the different
Right.
plants to what does this mean in Swedish, how does it look like.
Mhm.
So I was like just like not getting it as much, so I wanted to see the show.
Yeah.
Not with
Yeah.
then I would know, okay, that's an acorn, and that is like
Right.
birch sap, which I'm like extracting every spring in Sweden. So I wanted to, but I think I was once able to download the Outdoor Channel app on the iPad.
Oh,
Do
good.
they,
Well,
do they
let
have
me
it?
explain. Yeah, let me explain the best way to watch the show
Yeah,
now.
please do.
So the 5th season is premiering on cable right now. So that one's you can't see yet. And it'll be about 6 months. But seasons 1 through 4, so there's 40 episodes you can watch on myoutdoortv.com. So that's Outdoor Channel's streaming service. And that's one of those things you get like a free week and just binge as many as you want, kind of a thing. And then it's cheap, monthly subscription.
Yeah.
So all 4 seasons live there. And then on Amazon Prime, there's an Outdoor Channel subscription there. So you can also get wild fed through Amazon Prime, but it is a paywall.
Yeah.
It's behind a paywall. But so Amazon Prime or myoutdoortv.com is the ways to watch it. And then if you're in the States, when the show airs Mondays at 7:30 p.m., you can watch it as a stream live with an app called Friendly, FRNDLY TV.com. So kind of a pain. It's going to get a little bit easier, which is good. But yeah, I agree. The podcast is, I think, also just got to happen. Like I said, I've got most of the moving pieces assembled. It's been a little while since I've made any shows, and I've got a lot I want to talk about. So I'll be back soon.
Like, I'm here begging you, Daniel. I won't leave you alone until we have a podcast.
It's good hearing that.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It's great to hear that. Because like I was saying before, when I got into it, I mean, Tim Ferriss, Joe Rogan, these guys their shows weren't any bigger than mine at first. Because it was so early in the podcasting days.
You were really early.
I was just another one of these early podcasters.
Yeah.
And then now when I'm looking at getting back into it, and it's like, wow, it's so saturated. It feels like, is there room for my voice even? It doesn't matter.
But you know that Tim Ferriss also had that question. He questioned himself getting back into the podcast game or the YouTube game. But he shouldn't be looking at all of the biggest channels and compare himself to them, because there are people that really want to listen at his perspective. I've had all of his book. I've been following him for a long time. I've been following you also for a long time. People want to hear your voice. And that is my sticking point was for a long time. okay, why should I do a podcast? There are so many better podcasts, but I bring my perspective, I bring my experience, I bring my voice, and everybody doesn't love Tony Robbins. Everybody doesn't love, Wim Hof. They want to hear something from a different source. And I am one of your fans for sure.
Thanks, man. Well, that means a lot to me. Hopefully this year I'll be delivering that. So like I said, I have been working on it and have some show names and some things in the works. So we're not too far off. But in the
Thank you.
meantime, thanks for giving me 3 hours on your platform.
Yeah, for
Appreciate
sure.
that. It's been fantastic. Yeah,
It's
and happy
awesome.
to do it again anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's stay in
Yeah,
touch.
for sure. We'll stay in touch. Thank you so much. And where can people find you? This is the last question.
Sure. Best place to connect with me is on Instagram at Daniel Vitalis. And then my show is at wild.fed on Instagram. Those would be the best places where I'm most active. And then obviously you can find, my websites online and stuff, but just use my name.
Oh, great. Thank you, Daniel. This has been such a pleasure. My wife is down and wondering, like, okay, when is this podcast ending? When is my husband coming to put the kids to sleep? It's past their bedtime.
Yeah, my wife is, I got to judge her in a CrossFit competition tonight. So she's wondering where I am as well. So,
all right, cool.
So it's on. Hey, well, let's do this again. Fantastic talking to you, man. I really appreciate your time. And for everybody listening who doesn't know that I showed up late to this, I'm so embarrassed. Sorry to put you through that this morning.
No worries. Thank you, brother. All right.
Yeah, man.